All right, well, good evening, everyone. It is October 1st, 2020, and this is the Hopkinton School Board. Welcome and thanks for joining us. So we have a full board with us tonight with Norm Goupel, Rob Nadeau, Andrea Folsom, Seth Aframe is calling in this evening on the phone, and Jim O'Brien. And then we're joined by Steve Chamberlain, Michelle Clark, Christopher Kelly, Rebecca Gagnon, Bill Carrozza, and Amy Doyle. So thank you all for being with us this evening. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Steve has a flag to put up on screen for us.
Does that work?
That works great. Thanks, Steve.
Great. Love the confirmation, as you know. I'm big on the confirmation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That looks like it's on top of Mount Garfield.
You nailed it.
Did I? I've been up there a number of times. That's great.
You nailed it. Impressive.
Well, thank you, everyone. And so tonight, our meeting is once again being held virtually on using the Zoom format. We are able to do this because of the governor's emergency declaration due to the COVID-19 pandemic and emergency orders waiving some of the requirements of RSA 91A, and that's the open meeting guidelines or open meeting statute here in New Hampshire. Specifically, the governor, through his executive emergency orders, waived the provision of 91A that requires a physical location for public boards like the Hopkinton School Board to meet. It allowed for our meetings to be held remotely as long as they're properly noticed. So tonight we are holding our meeting over Zoom. There is both, for those who wish to attend, are able to join the meeting via video. And then there's also a call-in option available for members of the public to join. All of the other requirements of RSA 91A are being met, so we'll be taking minutes, and those minutes will be available per the state statute. There will be two opportunities during the course of this meeting for any attendees to provide public comment. There'll be one coming up here shortly, and then one at the end of the meeting. And I'll explain as we get to the public comments how members of the public can let us know that they have a comment to make, and we can call on you and you could provide those comments to us. So with that, Steve, are there any additions or deletions from the agenda tonight?
So we have two additions. One, we're going to talk about interscholastic sports and the tournament season, and we're going to give an update on their decision model matrix as well.
Perfect. And any correspondence?
There are a number of correspondence from the community members that are in the correspondence folder, and I also included a correspondence from the bond bank. If you caught it, just with a number of details regarding their sale, it was pretty positive and moves forward. It's just a good indication that it may be positive again when we go to the second portion. So that's what's in the correspondence folder.
Thank you, Steve. And we have several sets of minutes for approval this evening. And so I would ask if there's a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the minutes of our regular school board meeting held on September 3rd, 2020.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Second.
So the motion has been made and seconded, and just for the public, I should have mentioned it off the top, because we're in a remote environment, all of our votes have to be roll call votes, and so it takes a little bit longer, but I'll call each member's name and they'll vote as they will. And so Norm.
Norm Goupel is the yes.
Rob?
Rob Nadeau, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Seth?
That's A-frame, yes.
And Jim O'Brien is a yes. Our next set of minutes, is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on September 10th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Perfect. Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Norm?
Norm Goupel is a yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Andrea,
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Seth,
Seth A. Frame, yes.
and Jim O'Brien is a yes. And then finally, is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on September 16th, 2020?
So moved.
And
I'll second
Aye.
it. Speed up the process.
All right, the motion's been made and second. Are there any comments or discussion? All right, hearing none. Norm,
Norm Gupel is a yes.
Rob,
Rob Nato is a yes.
Andrea,
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Seth,
Seth A. Frame, yes.
and Jim O'Brien is a yes. Thank you all very much. So this is our first opportunity for public comment. And so if you're attending this meeting and you wish to provide public comment, if you move your mouse or your cursor towards the bottom of your screen, there should be a raise your hand button that you can click on, and that alerts us here that you have a public comment to make, and we can call on you accordingly. And so we have a hand raised, and so Amanda Gilman. Good evening, Amanda. Thanks for joining.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. And again, thank you for your continued efforts here. I know what you're putting in is catastrophic and honestly monumental. I am right now a little interested in better understanding the decision algorithm for the closing of Hopkinton Middle High School. Could someone please explain this to me? As it does appear to stray from the color-coded decision algorithm that was previously posted. So I don't quite understand. Can someone walk me through this?
Sure, and I think this is an agenda item later in the meeting that we'll go
So
over. Oh,
I
go ahead.
don't need you to reiterate it then, to go over it again. I guess I'll wait and listen for that piece, and I'll just offer public comment afterwards.
Okay, are you comfortable with that, Amanda?
I really want to hear that I need more information, so that
Okay.
would be lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
Okay.
So next hand that's raised is Jennifer Blagriff.
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. I just wanted to make sure the board members got the letter that I sent with a few other people. Correct? Okay.
Yes, we received that.
Okay. And then I realized today when I was thinking of joining this that I probably should, because it is the first day of October, and October is Dyslexia Awareness Month. So I just wanted to take a moment to just talk about dyslexia. So I have 2 kids with dyslexia in the schools right now, and that 3rd child who just started kindergarten, and then a baby who's 1.5 years. So dyslexia, I'm just going to read from the International Dyslexia Association page. Dyslexia is a neurological condition caused by a different wiring of the brain. There is no cure for dyslexia, and individuals with this condition must learn coping strategies. Research indicates that dyslexia has no relationship to intelligence. Individuals with dyslexia are neither more nor less intelligent than the general population. But some say the way individuals with dyslexia think can actually be an asset in achieving success. In public school settings where many teachers are not knowledgeable about this condition, students with dyslexia may be considered stupid or lazy. Parents who have children diagnosed with dyslexia should seek out reading instruction that is based upon a systematic and explicit understanding of language structure, including phonics. This reading instruction goes by many names: structured literacy, or in Gillingham, simultaneous multisensory explicit phonics, and others. There's a International Dyslexia fact sheet link on here that I can send you guys. And then it goes on to say if you think you or your child may be dyslexic, you can take IDA's test, which will evaluate the chance you have this condition. I don't know how accurate that really is, because kids need, some decent testing for that. But I'll add to this that I think our schools are pretty knowledgeable. I don't think anyone in this district thinks kids with dyslexia are stupid or lazy. But I do think that this district does need a lot more education. I think there's a lot more education needed just all around on dyslexia and what type of programs work and why those programs work. The there definitely needs to be more certified people in the district. I've advocated this to board meetings before. We need more Wilson certified instructors in the district. That program is really nice. First, I think it's a great, there's many programs that work, but that program I believe is nice for schools because it's easy for administration to track and see how things are going with students. And it's also easy for to see how their kids are making progress or not making progress, and to see that these programs are actually being done correctly. A big word in the dyslexia world is fidelity. Programs need to be done with fidelity. So anyway, during the budget process, I really hope that this board and the finance committee and the administrators will strongly consider getting more people Wilson certified in the district. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate it. And thanks for bringing it to our attention. This is Dyslexia Awareness Month. I didn't know that. Appreciate it. So next hand that is up is Dennis Goddard. Hi, Dennis. You can unmute yourself. Appreciate you joining.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to ask kind of in a similar vein about decision matrices concerning sports and, you know, when and what sports would be decided to, how those would proceed.
Dennis, so I can make sure I understand your question. Are you talking about like when school, if we close a school because of COVID, or just in general how sports are?
Oh, particularly with related to COVID. So I saw that the school was closed, but that sports were apparently proceeding forward. So I wanted to understand like what the decision making would be around sports.
Thanks. No, I got you now. So I think as we've talked about it, you know, if the schools are closed due to an outbreak of COVID, that we would you know, look at sports similarly and cancel sports. And we'll talk about as we move through the meeting, as I talked to Amanda, told Amanda, you know, the reasons that the middle high school was moved to remote instruction was because of difficulty with staffing. And so I think, you know, we moved forward with the sports program, but we did let the teams that we know, the teams that we were playing, know the situation in the schools and what we were currently doing, and the number of positive cases in the district, so they were aware. As we said we would, and we asked the same thing of those districts that we're playing to make the decision if we want to continue.
So around, because I know sports vary greatly in the degree of physical contact that one expects. Are there any sort of guidelines or anything that you're looking at with respect to, you know, should the field hockey team hang out not wearing masks together or anything like that?
Yeah, so thanks, Dennis, for the question. So we, when we made the decision to move ahead with sports, and I'm not going to have the wording of exactly the motion in front of me that we agreed upon, but pretty much it was, we asked that all of our sports, I guess the sports that were high risk, which were which were football, and then medium risk, which was field hockey and soccer, we asked that those teams wear masks both on the sidelines as well as during competition. And I know that our athletes and our coaches have been working towards 100% students wearing masks as best they can while they're competing. And so that's been going well. And then I know we've been having conversations with those teams that we're competing against, letting them know of our mask policy, and having conversations with those schools and those teams to see if they would also wear masks and kind of do the favor that we're doing for their students wearing masks. And so I attended a soccer game. I guess it was this week. It feels like it was months ago, but it was just this week, and both teams were wearing masks. And so I think that process is moving forward pretty well. All right, thanks, Dennis. Appreciate the question. And I see Amanda Gilman's hand is raised. And I don't know, Amanda, if you had another question or if your hand was just raised because you didn't put it down. So I don't want to not call on you. Oh, she lowered it. So, all right. So I don't see any other hands up. So we'll move off of the public comment, and we'll do comments from the Hopkinton School Board. And so who wants to go first? If anybody has anything prepared. Rob, you took yourself off mute. That's a good indication.
Oh, I was just off mute. So, but anyway, yes, I'll be quick. So I just wanted to, most folks that tune into these meetings are aware, and I'm sure everybody on the screen is aware, but the Commission to Study School Funding through the Carsey School is well underway, and I had an opportunity last week to spend some time with Dave Luno talking about their efforts and where things are going. So folks that are interested in that, it's if you go to Carsey and you type in Commission to Study School Funding, there's lots of good information as to where the legislature is working on. And then the other group that's going to be having a webinar on October the 6th is the New Hampshire School Funding Fairness Project. So if you want to listen in to that, again, you can Google them and dive in there. But it's a very big topic, as we all know, about the revenue side of our life and how the state distributes funding to us. So those are two opportunities for people to see what's going on. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Anybody?
Jim.
Any other member? Yeah, Seth, there you go.
Jim, is a superintendent search a separate item this week?
It will be a separate item, yep.
Okay, then I'll save it for then. I would just like to thank the students and the parents and the faculty. You know, I watched the schools switch, the middle high school switch on a dime from what they were doing to remote. I watched it happen in my own living room. And I was impressed with the flexibility of everyone. None of this is fun. None of this is what we desire, but to get through this time and as best as we can, it's going to take flexibility, and this was certainly a test of the system. And while I'm sure there are different views on how things can be optimized, I do want to say I saw a lot of learning going on in my house, and I want to thank both the kids and the teachers for making that happen. So thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Seth. Norm?
Yeah, sure. I'll go. I wanted to say, thank you to the all our students, going back to our leadership, Steve, and everyone, and really getting the school started. I wanted just to point out tonight, we all have to work together, and what I mean by working together is it's really important that we're submitting our check-ins for our kids every morning, and we have to work together. That seeing the email from Bill saying 35% have forgotten, we really need to work together. We developed a plan for us to go back to school, and it's really important that we work together as a community so our kids can continue to go to school. So I just wanted to say, as a board member, let's work with the school district. Let's submit that information and really work with each principal and having our kids be safe. I want to say thank you to the sports teams, that's visited here, our fans and our players. They've all been great. I've attended 4 games, Jim, and I have to say the community's been great with sportsmanship, with wearing a mask, and our teams are playing fun. And it's great to see soccer. It's great to see field hockey. We didn't do that great against Bo. Don't smile, Steve. But we did really good sportsmanship where, we all came together and had sports, and it was great to see. I'll save a little comments for the superintendent search. I just want to say it's been great seeing the community be involved in that process. We had a nice meeting last night with the budget committee, and I want to say thank you to them for the members that came to discuss some stuff about the superintendent search. It was great to hear from them and to really engage everyone in the community on this process. And I was really great to hear input from people throughout the week. Thank you.
Thanks, Norm. Andrea?
I guess I'm up. I don't actually have very much to add. I will piggyback off of Rob. Another great site if folks are looking for information on budgeting and school funding is reachinghighernh.org. That's another place where you can find a really good breakdown on some things like SWEPT, what that is, the state tax, that's a local tax, that's a state tax, and other budgetary concerns. And I'll be actually presenting in front of the Joint Commission next week with an update on how our school district is doing. So yeah,
Can you send us the link for that?
I can once I get it.
All right, awesome. Love to see that. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thanks, Andrea. And I don't have much. I guess the only other thing I would add is, I actually talked to Norm a little bit about this today, is that, it feels like we just exited budget time because of our vote on the budget, but I think we as the school board, and then, Steve and then his team are going to start to put together our next budget. And so I only name that because I know there's been a lot of changes over the past 6 to 8 months, and all of us are feeling the effects of, I think, the world we're living in. But life goes on, and the district is going to be needing to put together a budget, and the budget process that we engage in is long and sometimes challenging. And so I want to thank our leadership team because I know they're going to start digging into this soon. Thank you ahead of time for the time and effort I know it takes to put the budgets together. And then just, I know we have a finance committee that's thinking about this and meeting on it. Thank you, Norm and Rob, for doing that. There's a CIP committee that Andrea and I are part of, working on our capital budget. And then all of this, conversations will go through the school board, and then it'll go to the budget committee. And so there's a lot of places for interested members of the public to engage in this process, both with the finance committee and then with this board and then with the budget committee. And so I do look forward to the budgeting process. That may sound odd, but it is an important piece of the work that we all signed up here to do. And it is a statement and it's a commitment to our community and to our school district. And so it is an important process and an important work product. And so it is something to look forward to, although sometimes it feels a little bit taxing and daunting. But I just want to invite the community. And I know that Norm and Rob are thinking a lot about how we put this process together, the type of information and how we make it more understandable for the community. So I thank you guys, and I just wanted to say that budget season is upon us. So here we go. And with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item here tonight, which are presentations and staff reports. And so tonight we have building administrator reports, and we didn't ask for written reports, which I'm sure everybody's thankful for. So these would be verbal reports from our building administrators. And I don't know, Steve, I don't know if you wanna frame anything or kick us off. We're ready to dive in.
Sure. We're back to the first and third regular board meeting schedules. So the first one this month will be the building, and then October, the first meeting will be central office. So the building administrators are bumped up under this format, and we do have all the central office behind in reserve, and then we'll swap at the next first meeting of the month. So no, it's great. And that's about it. Look forward to that. And it's the first time in a while we've had a report. So it'll be a good opportunity just to share some things with the community.
Great, thanks, Steve. So, Mr. Carrozza, you're first on our list. So thanks for being here, and thanks for your report. I'm sorry about your Red Sox.
Are you? Yeah, worst season since '65, I think. I heard. So it is what it is. Celtics got pretty far along, so.
And the
Higher draft
last night.
Higher draft.
There you go. So I got a little dry run of this today. I was talking about how things are going. I was outside with some staff who were having lunch at a picnic table donated by a member of our community, which was wonderful. And the famous Don Houston came by with his wife to check out the construction. I think he does that on occasion. It's always really good to see him. I still remember the last time we had a construction project done. Steve and I and many others were involved with the playground. So this is a little bigger project. And he just obviously asked how things were going. And I think at Herald and probably at Maple as well, when I talked to Amy and maybe the high school, logistics are pretty much in place. So things like master schedules, duty schedules are there. We now have a 7:45 drop off. I want to thank all those parents that we definitely changed their lives a little bit, but giving us an extra 15 minutes in the morning allowed us to approach the morning meeting system that we've always had. Now PLCs and consults can happen in the morning, which is great. Our pickup at the end of the day is going well. It's only about 15-20 minutes, which is about what it used to be. And so it feels like almost like school, almost like the regular school. Now we can talk about things like a new math program perhaps for next year, or beginning assessments, and just getting back to the business of education, making the home days worthwhile in the hybrid model, things like that. And kids are really happy. I mean, if you walk around the building and you talk to kids, they're really very happy to be in school, and that makes all of us adults happy as well. It's not easy. It's definitely a lot harder way to do things, and I know teachers are working really hard and are probably a little more tired than normal, but I think they're also very happy that for the most part we're in person. Obviously, the construction is a major part of my day. It's funny, on a typical day now, I can have 3/4 of the outside of our building full of construction. So obviously the main side on the right side of the building as you're driving in, which is actually the west side. That's where the major construction is happening. And I hope you're either watching my video I do on Fridays, or dropping by yourself to see that. On the other side of the building, we're putting in a cistern for the fire suppression. So that's been a little bit of work, but been great. And then actually the last 2 days, they've had to dig up to check out the septic system in the back of the building. So all three of the 4 sides are pretty busy. The good news on that from Larry from BPS is that septic looks good. They have a few things to work on, but he seemed pleasantly surprised that although wasn't happy with the installation that happened, I don't know, somewhere in the 90s, it looks like it's going to be okay. So that's good news. So overall, I think life is pretty good at Harold Martin. Again, because I think we're in our 3rd week, and we're moving to a little bit like what education has been like there for many years, but crazy busy, I'll have to tell you. So there you go. Any questions?
Well, yeah, I was going to say thanks for all that you and your team are doing
Sure.
over there. Are there any questions for Bill?
I love the videos you're doing. I really do. It's
fun.
I try to go down there a couple of times to take a peek, and the community has definitely loved the videos. So I thank you for taking the time off to do that and being patient with the project. It's a lot of busy construction there. So thank you.
For me, it's a lot of fun. I think for a lot of the teachers, it's loud sometimes, but I really think they're understanding. It's the way it is. It's got to be that way for a while.
I've heard the kids get a little distracted with seeing all the machinery going in there and all that. But
yeah, well, I think teachers will literally have at certain windows, we'll have a construction break. So they'll have kids, okay, kids, let's go out and look for a little bit. And then when we're done, we're back to work.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
If there's any other questions, I'm sorry, I didn't see anybody.
I just wanted to check in, and since I guess we finished up almost our 3rd week, just how hybrid is going at our youngest elementary school. With a little
sure. I kept this brief, but I could talk all day about things like this. I think it's going really well. We're starting the what I like to call the home day work, and so grade levels together are working on coming up with worthwhile activities for kids to do on the days that they're not in person. We hope at some point there could be a more technology element to that as we gain a few more platforms and also perhaps a few more devices too. But that, as we know, we're waiting for devices to come into the district. But that's going well. I think remote learning is going really well. When I watch and talk to what I like to call Pepper and Post, Kathy Pepper and Meredith Post, they're really doing a wonderful job. I think it's organized. Parents seem very happy. I've gotten a lot of good feedback. And one of the big advantages of our remote teachers is that they're helping us, the rest of the school, figure out how to do remote how to do it better. We did it back in the spring, but I think, they've raised it to a whole new level, and we're learning from them in terms of how we can, do remote. I know we'll talk about this later in the meeting, but if we have to go that way for, a period of time. So yeah, I think it seems to be going well.
Great, thanks. And our sounds like kids and teachers are feeling like a little more comfortable now that everyone's back in.
Yeah, the mask thing is obviously, it's, I guess a good word is bizarre, in a way, but it's really necessary. For the most part, I've had very little a few minor issues with some kids having trouble with math, but by and large, it doesn't seem to affect kids nearly as much as people like us, I think. But I think there's a fair amount of appropriate mask breaks. And teachers are taking those breaks too. Like I said, they're eating lunch outside. We really don't have a staff room, nor can we really have a staff room right now. There'd be too many people in one space. So the fact the weather's been really good has been very helpful as well.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
I guess one of the quick comment, Bill, that I've gotten kind of discussing that the smaller class sizes for these kids, in person, has really helped with maybe a little more curriculum than it would be for a class of 23. Is that what you're gathering? I asked Amy the same thing. When you have like 8 students in a classroom, this is actually, of course, we'd want the kids back, when this under normal circumstance, but to a degree, it's kind of helped a little bit with these students, with 8, 9, with the curriculum, right?
Yeah, I think we're still figuring that out. It kind of runs both ways. Obviously, we're seeing kids about half the time, a little more than half the time on the weeks they have 3 days. But yeah, I think for certain kids, they certainly get a lot more personal attention. So overall, I think that's a good thing. I did talk to a teacher today. If you're trying to get a discussion going, you don't have as many kids to get that discussion going, so there's that side of it. I think we'll find out. It feels like we're doing the right thing, though, no matter what. At first, when we started the hybrid, I thought, well, is this going to be worth the advantage over remote? And I don't think there's any doubt right now that we all would agree that it really is, 3 weeks in.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions for Bill? All right, great, thank you, Bill. We'll move over to Amy at Maple Street.
Everyone, thanks for having us tonight. I thought I might start my report based on our previous structure that we've used in the past, which is looking at some accomplishments, some things that we're making progress on, and some opportunities that we're seeing. So at Maple Street School right now, our enrollment is 203 students. We have 60 students in 4th grade, 54 in 5th, and 51 in 6th grade, and 35 students in our remote classroom. I've just been so very proud of the students and their families and the staff that have made this school year start off so successfully. We have completed almost 3 weeks of the 2020-2021 school year, and although we're navigating a lot of new policies and procedures, things are overwhelmingly positive. Our new learning communities have been established in both our hybrid and remote classrooms, and those relationships are being built on trust and care, and important connections are being made. We're making progress in our ability to grow and to learn how to teach and be in a global pandemic. We are making significant progress on collecting our fall benchmark assessments, and the classroom teachers and the reading specialists, Deidre Smith, Carolyn Neff, are really helping and spearheading getting as much information as we can, hoping to have that data compiled by the mid-October. We do have to talk about state testing, which is something I'm sure that the other administrators are thinking about as well. But it is the assessment data that we need is essential so that our instruction can be responsive to our students. So we are investing a lot of time right now in gathering that information. At Maple Street, we don't have as much construction as Bill does, but certainly we still have some projects that are ongoing. Our roof work continues, and we also have another section of the roof that needs some work. We have some final touches to go on the ramp as well. And as far as opportunities, this has just been, I often say to, teachers and staff and my fellow principals, I'm not sure we'll ever have another time in our career that's like this. So just the opportunity to reimagine, how public education works, reimagining all the logistics. We have found some really creative ways to deal with arrival and lunch and recess and dismissal. And some of those things I hope continue. At Maple Street, we've been eating outside. And it has just been absolutely wonderful. Kids are out there on their yoga mats and hanging out with their friends, and it's just wonderful. I think there are some things that we might try to keep from the COVID times. We do have a new budget season, as you've mentioned, and that'll give us an opportunity to look at our needs and our wants in a fiscally responsible way. And we continue to be nimble and flexible as the dynamic learning environment continues. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I'm sorry, I couldn't get off mute. I guess the same questions, just how, a little more specifically, how hybrid learning has been going.
I mean, I think that over the last 3 weeks, you know, after those first couple of days, just the anxiety for everyone, I think in the building went down a fair amount, just getting there and you know, getting used to it, seeing what it would be like. I think the hybrid model is going really well. I feel so supported. I have a wonderful school nurse who every day, you know, walks me through different things. And when I have questions, you know, she is, you know, always reading about the CDC, talking to someone at DHHS. And, you know, even though the middle high school pivoted to remote, there were certainly parents across the district, families that had questions. And, you know, I think that the staff feels really like we're in good hands, you know, in terms of like the medical piece. Seeing the kids, I mean, it's just so much better. I agree with Bill that even if, you know, whatever happens, it's been really a great thing to have kids coming back into the building and connecting them to a new learning community. I think that relationships are the most important thing in education at my grade level. And so I really think that having the opportunity to do that face-to-face has been wonderful. But to answer Norm's question that he hasn't asked, but I'll just jump right in. I do think having a smaller number of students in the class has, you know, made it possible to cover more content in new and creative ways. I mean, I was trying to think in education what my smallest class ever was when I taught at middle school math in Bow. And it was never 8 students. You know, it's just such an opportunity to get to know kids and really, you know, be able to provide instruction and connection and feedback in such a different way. I mean, the feedback, it can just be so fast. So I do think that the hybrid model is going well.
Thank you for answering the question that I did not ask.
I knew you were thinking it, Norm.
Exactly.
Any other questions for Amy? Great, thank you, Amy. And then we'll move up to the middle high school. Chris.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the school board for hosting the administrative team tonight. You know, I just want to start off, you know, just thanking our entire staff. You know, our front office staff has been key to helping, you know, open our school and making sure that it was successful, making sure that they're asking all the right questions when we have visitors to the building. So we know that that's an important piece to just keeping everyone safe in our building. So they ask the same questions a lot during the day. So it can get a little redundant for them, but I just want to thank our office staff. And as Amy alluded to, I just also want to give a shout out to Amy Cook. There's a lot of collaboration that happens with our school nurse when we're in regular times, but this is a constant conversation that we continue to have as we continue to update ourselves around the student body and just things that we need to be aware of as we continue to learn more about COVID and how to protect ourselves and to protect our students. So I just want to thank her for all of her continued support. And Rebecca, because the three of us really work hard to make sure we're staying on top of things. So, and I would agree certainly with Seth's earlier comments. You know, as last weekend started to progress, I don't know that Saturday morning I would have said by Sunday night I would have had a conversation with Steve saying we're flipping. You know, it just happened really quick to do that and get that message out to our staff. It was certainly a quick flip of our school, you know, and they're working hard to continue to deliver our curriculum, but they're also doing it on 2 different platforms. Many of our staff are, both, you know, delivering it to remote students and to in-person students. And our IAs are continuing to play an important role with those teachers who are teaching remotely from home. So just a lot of thanks to all of our instructional assistants and to the entire staff that are in the classrooms working with the students. I could tell you that having the students back for 2 weeks and then not having them there this week, you know, I don't like it. You know, I mean, I got used to the building being full again and having life. And so not having them back this week has been a little difficult, you know, having the hallways quiet again. But you know, with all of that said, we are still trying to get back to some sense of normalcy. So we're running student elections right now, looking for our student council members. We changed our approach with that. So the students had to submit speeches, and if the speeches were approved, they're going to work to submit a video through Flipgrid, and we will share that out to the student body. So that's how they will present their speeches, and then we'll do a vote through utilizing a Google form. So everybody will have a chance to vote. And then we'll continue to work on getting student reps to the board too through this process. So I hope to have those wrapped up in the next week or so. And so I want to thank Kate LeClaire and all of our class advisors who are working through that process. And I also want to thank our custodial staff. Tomorrow's Custodial Appreciation Day. So they've been working hard at all 3 buildings, I'm sure, but I see it, you know, I see our staff in our building to make sure all the tables are clean and you know, the bathrooms and all that throughout the day. So Joe Case is getting plenty of steps in during the day, trying to make sure the building is clean. So just thank you to all of our custodial staff. As you know, last Wednesday we had SATs. We thought that went well, went off without a hitch. And now we're preparing for October the 14th PSATs, where those students who are taking the PSAT will be the only students in the building. The rest will be home working asynchronously on assignments that they've been assigned. And then I know Rebecca and Beth Stern spoke this morning about state testing, so we're getting that ball rolling as well. And you know, overall, you know, I thought in the first 2 weeks the kids were doing a really, really good job with the masks, paying attention to what they needed to do to keep themselves safe, you know, utilizing the hand sanitizer when they leave their classroom to head outside for their mask breaks. As Bill alluded to, the weather has really helped us out. So they get a nice walk in during the day, so that helps with the wellness pieces. And you know, we're looking forward to getting our students back. So again, I would agree with Bill. You know, the logistics are falling into place. So we're up and running with a little hurdle this week that we had to work through.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions?
Can someone walk me through, you know, I'm not trying to beat something up, but I'm trying to wrap my head around what is the procedure in our district when a student is going to school and their temperature or their report has not been collected. Can someone walk me through how that works at our locations? I'm assuming it's the same for all.
Yep. So we've taken I don't know how Bill or Amy are doing it, but every morning I'll check in with Amy Cook to see how many students we did not receive a health screening form on. And it's ranged from 30 to 40. One day I think we had 98 students who did not complete the form. When we have 30 or to 40, it's obviously that's still a lot, but it's a little bit more manageable than 98. So on the day that it was that high, we asked our teachers to talk to their students, and if they had not completed the form, to utilize the app on their phone or the link that we asked them to download for their phone to complete it. And then if we still have students who are left over that have not completed it, we will call home or call down the student, and Amy will check in with those students. But that becomes a pretty busy morning for her to do that. So she works hard to track those students down and make sure that they're doing what they need to do with a health screening form.
We're trying. Rebecca, Matt, and I, and the nurses, Matt, trying to develop the most efficient way. So we're trying to do it because it really is, as you said, it's about working together and being proactive. It's also part of our MOA with our association. So any changes, significant changes to it, we'd have to just address that way. So we are trying. The nurses are doing a great job following up. Staff too. You know, it's a staff. I do it every morning. I've established my routine. So we're trying, but we need everybody because it is a proactive step. If no one comes into the school with any symptoms, that helps us, obviously. And it gives me more assured when I take my temperature every morning, and when I do mine, it's a good reflection on my state of being and make sure I'm doing okay when I come into work. But we're trying hard, Norm, but I appreciate your support for it, and we do the best we can.
Have we noticed, I'm just wondering, is it becoming less common that people are filling them out? I'm just wondering if there's any trends in what we're seeing that, you know, did it start off by everybody doing it and now it's sort of waning? No.
My most recent conversations, we are concerned that the effectiveness of it is just not there. I had a discussion with Maple Street, with Nicole in Maple Street. She's concerned about the effectiveness. Amy too. Jean is trying hard. So I think we're having some pockets, but I think obviously last week, having to go remote and working together. We're trying to find the most efficient way to do it. We understand we don't want a lot of friction on this operation. So I've actually taught some people how to put it on their phones myself, and but I think there has been a little bit of drop recently on the number of percentage.
What can we do, Steve, to help you with this?
We tried. So in our research, some districts, there's no accountability to it. It's an honor system. Please do it. Do the best you can. We opened up trying to have some strong accountability to it, trying to reinforce. We were hoping that calling down to the nurse was a deterrent, because people don't want to be singled out. We've looked at different apps to do it. We've looked at how do you do it within our student management system. So it's really, sometimes for us, it's the why. Hopefully, if we keep students with and faculty without symptoms in our school, we have a better chance of staying in the hybrid. I mean, that's the why that we do it, because if we do this together, we think we can maintain our system better.
Has there been any uptick in absenteeism because people are staying out, not necessarily because they're as sick as they might normally be and stay out, but just because they have symptoms? Do we have any sense of that?
We do have some of that, but we also have, I think, some students who are, they'll just call in and say, I'm going to go remote today, that don't have, or we don't know if they do. So that's an added layer, I think, for Amy Cook and our front office staff to work through in the morning. So, and I know Rebecca probably has some feedback on that as well, because she works with TAN on the attendance.
I just wanted to add, we actually added some new codes to our student management system to Aspen. So we have a code that we can use first thing in the morning in advisory when we're taking attendance. If somebody, we call it unanticipated remote. So if somebody is supposed to be in school, but they're coming up remote on the screen, it flags. And then both Mrs. Cook, our nurse, and Mrs. Montour in the office, we can immediately pull a list. By 8:20, we have a list of all the unanticipated remotes, so we can follow up immediately to see why are they remote. Is it because of a symptom or something like that? So we have a process that we then work through with Mrs. Cook to call home on those and to find out if there's symptoms, and if so, to work out the next step of our protocol with them. We have some codes for teachers as well, so that if a student needs to be remote, we can put that in so that we've kind of got some data we can start to track to see, are they out for symptoms? Are they out because they're quarantined? Are they out for other reasons, like not a college visit these days, but something like that. And so we can kind of separate that all out and track it a little better.
Thank you.
Do we encourage remote just because, well, today I'd rather be remote? I mean, is that really part of the system?
Not
Chris?
Particularly.
We don't encourage it. I've talked to a few other administrators, and this is not a Hopkinton only kind of trend. It is happening in other high schools as well. So I don't know if they are calling it a mental health day and they just want to stay home and learn from home. But it is an added layer and a little bit more stress added to the teacher, because all of a sudden, Chris is showing up on the screen when he should be in class, and and you plan specifically for, that you only have 4 remote kids, for instance, and everyone else is in class, and maybe you have 4 in class. And so maybe you're really getting creative about how you're going to have a debate between the remote students and the students in class. And then all of a sudden, if someone's home, it may only see 1 student, but that does throw a teacher off. I mean, there's a lot of planning that has to go into this model, and that's frustrating for teachers, and I understand that frustration, and it's and they work with it, but it's tough to do it that way.
Yeah.
And I assume this is going for you, Bill and Amy, also the same situation where you guys are having to talk to the nurse, and I mean, younger children over there, but It's the same situation.
I mean, I would say that it is similar to Chris and Rebecca. We don't really have the remote option. You know, we don't have kids that can just unexpectedly, you know, move that direction. We have had parents that, you know, with an overabundance of caution, which we have appreciated, you know, if they are getting a COVID test, or if someone in the family isn't feeling well, they're saying, you know, I'm just going to keep my student home today. We might do we might go to the doctor. I just want to make sure that, you know, that they haven't been exposed, and we appreciate that. We get several parents, at least almost every night, we've received an email from a parent, you know, my older son has a fever. Can my younger son come to school? And Nicole's message has always been, if your child is symptomatic, do not send them to school. But if they aren't, then you can send them to school. But some parents are still saying, you know, no, I want to keep them home. You know, they're not feeling well, which we appreciate, because that enables, as Steve said, if we're able to keep symptomatic people, or even if they're on the, you know, cusp a little bit, you know, it'll keep us safer. But, you know, we do have, you know, Nicole spends a lot of time trying to track down, reach out, send emails. I know Bill has sent some to the community. I've sent some to the community. And, you know, your question about what can you do to help us, I really think it's the community. You know, we've talked about, you know, do we do temperature screening at the door? We just simply don't have the, you know, the system to do that. And we really do need families to do their own student, which I forget sometimes as I'm walking into the building. But now I do it at 4 a.m. before I go to the gym, which, you know, you put it into your system, and then you're like, I want to try to beat Steve's time. So.
And I'm sleeping at 4 a.m. Because it's awful early. But
you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah, right. But I just to echo, I completely agree with everything Amy said. Same thing at Herald. Jean Picard, our nurse, we've not, you know, we have sent kids home who have symptoms. Obviously, we've not had a single positive test. We've had a number of parents test and come back negative. I got an email today from a parent all excited for good reason. We haven't exceeded our isolation room more than 2. We have another room if we have to go to 3, but we haven't exceeded that yet. So, you know, so far so good. And I should echo my colleagues, and, you know, Jean's been amazing too. I mean, the calories the nurses are burning these days is really phenomenal. It's a lot of stress on them, but, you know, it's what they do. And I think they have a lot of passion for it, and they know that their expertise is keeping us in school.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you for those reports. That's really helpful in hearing how hybrid model. I think Andrea's questions are good at helping us, you know, how those models are going in each of the schools is really good to hear and learn from. So appreciate, again, all the hard work that you and your teams are putting in. It is pretty amazing. And I hear it from the community as well. You know, no one is overly happy about the situation that we're all in, but I think they're very happy that, you know, kids are getting some in-person instruction in the classrooms, are getting to meet their teacher in their community, and that it may not feel to all of you who are sort of at the center of the hurricane that to us on the outside it does feel very well organized, and that things are put together. Anyway, so I get a lot of feedback from people just very thankful for the work that you all are doing every day. So thank you. Next on the agenda are performance indicators. And so we have 2 that I think Steve's going to present to us tonight on post-high school plans, and then advanced placement test performance. So Steve, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure. So as part of our monitoring of student success, we monitor and present a few things. So tonight we're going to do the post-high school plans and advanced placement tests. Typically we do the state testing, but there wasn't any state testing. And in the past, what I wrote about in board notes, last year we started trying to track student success in college. Did they come back for year 2? And in the 6-year time span, did they achieve a diploma? If you remember, it's about 60% or 62% of Hopkinton students 6 years out achieved a diploma. That was very seamless in Naviance. We switched to a different support system in our school counseling office. but I still hope to gain that information and continue to track student success in college 6 years out through the clearinghouse, but it's not as seamless as it was. So tonight we'll keep going with some academic data. In 2 weeks, or actually it's the first meeting in November, we'll talk about another indicator, which is the YRBS, and we'll present the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, a little bit about that aspect of life. Those are things like we track. So the first one, and I'll share the screen and hopefully it'll work. So the post-high school report, let's see, how's that? Does that appear?
It appeared. It looks great.
Great, I like that. So something that we've been talking about a long time since I became superintendent is this notion of high school plus. For a long time, we just simply did the student get a diploma, and that was the end result. And what we started working on early in my superintendency, we tried to look at not just the diploma, but it's high school plus, and that meant for us, are we preparing students with certification in a specialty area, including admittance into the military service or a college or university degree when graduating from Hopkinton High School. So it's not enough just to get a degree, it's are we preparing them for the next step? When I was principal, how this came to be, I had a number of students that I worked really hard and the teams worked really hard to graduate, but they clearly weren't ready and they weren't ready for that profession and they weren't ready to enter. And we had I followed some youngsters and worked with some families and felt we can do better and we need to do better. So our goal is certification in a specialized area or college admittance or certainly the military. And this notion came from a time before we had a national healthcare system that in data, if you weren't able to achieve a certification in a specialized area or college, university degree or military, you weren't able to get health insurance. And if you're in health insurance, the availability of health insurance actually have with the length of life. So we really put some high stakes into this notion of high school plus. So how this works, Michelle Fisher gathers the data and then I follow up and we do. So these are the schools where our students are expected to attend. And it's just always interesting to look at what is this iteration of this class. As you see, 11 at UNH and Keene and in New Hampshire. And then we take a little bit deeper look. So 80% are entering 4-year, 15% are 2-year. So we're at a 95% college acceptance rates, which is nice. We think that's a good thing. We've got 3 entering the workforce, 1 entering the military. The vast majority of the youngsters stay pretty close to home. In New England, we've got some in New Hampshire, Northeast. We've got 5 going to the South, which is always interesting. 3 west of the Mississippi and 1 going to Canada. So then in the last few years, we actually went back and I really, as your superintendent, I wanted to have a handle on what are our special education students doing? What is their plan? And this year, 5 out of 6 acceptance into college, and the other 1 gleefully and willfully, and goal was going to the workforce. So we try and dig in a little bit more. So I would say all 6 achieved high school plus because the other one is gainfully employed, and 5 or 6 reached their goal of getting to a college acceptance. So, that's something that we track and we look, and there's a lot of variables here, but at least your superintendent is reviewing every single special education student's success in our school and their plan post high school. And again, I hope to supplement this with how are kids doing in college. In fact, they go back second year, and did they achieve the federal government tracks achievement of a diploma within 6 years as an achievement. Questions about this report? And this will be up it's in the supplemental materials, but it'll be up online as well.
Did you want me to wait till the end of your other segment before I ask my question, Steve? If it's
No, we can go report by report, would be great.
So when I was going through your report today, I was just kind of thinking of a couple of things, the current situation that we're in right now. The whole way that we are learning with our students now, we're doing remote, we're in person, and our students are having an opportunity to learn. One thing that I was trying to wrap my head around today, last year we had talked a little bit about VLAX, about giving our students an opportunity to achieve college credit here in Hopkinton that gives them an opportunity to have basically an associate's degree when they leave. My understanding, an associate's degree when they leave Hopkinton, which I think is a great thing. Which I would love this board to look at, because tuition, for example, UNH right now is $34,000 for a resident, and if this district is able to give a student an opportunity to be able to go and have that level of education, leaving Hopkinton and having to be applied here, is that something we can do, Steve? Is it something that what this board can do to help a student? Because before I finish, there's parents out there who are unemployed, who aren't going to be able to help their student go to school. And if we can alleviate something for that student with some college credit to alleviate a year or two, I would love to do something like that.
So there's a lot of opportunities for students to achieve college credit within HOP. One is Project Running Start. So that's connected to NHTI. So if a instructor has the credential to teach the course that NHTI offers, they can get transcripted credit from NHTI through New Hampshire Running Start. And I think for the last couple of years, they've actually waived the fee. So that's one way to do it. Another way, is our AP we're going to talk about in a minute. That's one way to get usually classes omitted. In the old days, it was transcripted, but now it's omitted. But there are other articulated agreements. We have opportunity with NEC. You can take a class at NEC. Some schools that are a little bigger have an agreement with like Southern New Hampshire. And you can take simultaneous courses, like us with Running Start with NHTI. So there's a lot of opportunity, but a little bit is what staff do we have prepared for? We had at one point, one of our best teachers of calculus did not have the advanced degree, so that teacher could not teach in Running Start, even though he's one of the finest teachers in math that I've ever seen, but that's the regulatory environment. So there's a lot of different opportunities that we certainly can avail. Is there room for some growth here? I suspect, but it's a little bit about spreading yourself too thin. Do we do Running Start with NHGI? Through our project Lead the Way, you can get credit through Rochester Institute of Technology, through Running Start, through RIT. So I think we have opportunities for youngsters, but there's always room for growth.
And what would be that growth that we could do, Steve?
If it was, if we really wanted, if this was a focus, it would be trying to make another articulate agreement with another institution that perhaps offers a little bit more in line with what we are. But that's not, we're getting 95% of our kids into a secondary school. Our data says we are serving the population pretty well. Honestly, there might be other areas that we can serve the whole child a little bit different, because that population is served pretty well with what we're doing. Just some thoughts.
Steve, how does this report to me looks pretty great. I'm just curious how this compares to other districts. Does the state collect this information across the board and you're able to compare? 85%, is a pretty high number of students graduating going on to a 2 or 4 year school. So I'm just curious. Yeah, no, it's very. I think we can look at, and I haven't been on it recently, but there's a school dashboard, a district dashboard that the state puts out. You click, and there you can compare. And I do that during the budget time because it's very easy to check cost per student. And I can go back and see if this data is updated there. I did, if you remember, because I was intrigued by the 6 year graduation span. I did reach out to some of my colleagues because we just had the anomaly. We were right in the mix. That 62% was. I did it at a regional meeting and just asked people, and they went back and found out. So it was pretty close. But this is a strong. There's no question. This is strong. This is one of the documents that when people, usually in the summer, people are shopping districts, and we put this on the web, and people go on and ask me about this document and make sure, because this is when some parents are looking at, where are kids getting into college.
What do you make of the fall off? What do you make of the fall off from the high number going to the college and then about a 20% fall off from the 6 year number? That's one thing I didn't have a chance last year to unpack, Seth. Is it finances? Is it academic success? When years ago,
I used to co-op the basketball team or national honor, and we used to do a phone survey. Some people might remember I phone surveyed all graduates the Wednesday of Thanksgiving and trying to get their preparation. And we actually got pretty good return. Most people at the Wednesday of Thanksgiving were home. But we weren't able to last year unpack that. That one I'd love to have. Michelle and I talked about that with the finance committee. Like, this is the area I'd love to have more time in to dig in and unpack and determine. But the day-to-day operations of this place is prohibitive to really unpacking that kind of data. But I'd love to.
Yeah.
Everybody okay? So the next, and why, some people sometimes ask, Steve, why do you track AP tests? Well, and Rob can speak to this too, because he used to be very heavily involved. It's what the AP does for us. It's a third-party evaluation of our instruction based on national standards that can compare us to actually out the world in the country. It's a unique opportunity. The curriculum is there. We usually send teachers. I think Rob went to AP camp once. I'm pretty sure. Didn't you go to AP camp? And the teachers really like to look at this because it is a way to look beyond our own assessments. This is a national assessment that is evaluated by a neutral third party. A couple of things that we look at, and again, this will be up. We look at the number of students in class and percentage of students who take the test, just to see where we're at. If we have 30 people in the class and one person takes the test, that may be a sign that they're not feeling well prepared for that piece. And so we kind of look at that. In the old days, I'm sure Rob remembers some teachers, it was going, the AP test was going to war. We actually had a teacher who used to want kids to take it so much they offered to pay for it. I don't know if you remember that, Rob, but that was out there for a while. So this is our menu of, now if you look at, if you see the numbers really low, it's not offered, it's like an every other year, and that was an independent study. So as you take a look at that. So our results, our AP tests are really strong. So we've got 152 opportunity, 108 out of 152 took the test. That's really strong. And we had 81 of the 108 that took it got a 3 or better. And a 3 or better is considered successful on that AP test. That's about 75%, and about the state average is 68%. So we exceed the state average on the test. We'll get a little bit more data when the SAT, we look at the SAT pretty strong too, but that was just taken, as Chris said, last week or something. And I'll supplement this with the state testing data, and we take a look at where we are for the state testing. We look at proficiency or above compared to the state. And I think last year out of 33 tests, we were above state average in 31, but I'll update the board as that comes. But this is our
Do you look at how many sorry.
No, go ahead, Seth, I'm sorry.
Do you look at how many actual kids, I mean, I'm just wondering what this data really means. Like, are we looking at, so you gave the number of tests, but that could be the same kid in 4 AP classes. So what breadth does this data really give us?
You know, that's a great question. I'm going to get that answer because I love that question. I will come back with that answer and say how many students participate in the AP testing program, not how many tests taken, Seth, and I'll bring that back next time. So thank you for that.
Okay.
Steve, oh, sorry, Rob.
That's okay. I'm just going to chime in for a minute on Steve's, why kids don't take the test. Seems, at least in my experience teaching that course, there were 3 variables. One was the cost. It's about it was $92 or $93 to take the exam. Occasionally expected performance. If a kid didn't think he was going to do a 3 or better, but they slugged it out, they might not take it. But the other one that I found interesting, sometimes there were students who knew where they were going, and they also knew that that university or college was only going to accept 2 AP courses for credit, or 3 for credit. So if they had taken more than that, then they didn't really see a reason to spend the money because it wasn't going to come out the other side. Where, I was always telling kids, $93 is a really good investment to save you $2,000 or $3,000 down the road for the course. But
Rob, thank you for that. I appreciate that very much.
Yep.
And my quick question was, when did they take these tests? When was this testing done? Was it pre or post COVID times?
So this was done during COVID. So this is post. And one thing, this is the first time that, because I think of the unique environment, there was an opportunity to appeal. So if someone got a 2 and a teacher was able to look, this year was a teacher was able to look at the results, and if the teacher felt that it was misgraded, and we had that happen once this year. So upon review, it was appealed and it was reassessed, and it became a 3 or better. And I think that was the first year that can happen.
The other variable on this, Andrea, and I think, Steve, this is good for the community to know. I mean, we've scored pretty well on APs, and they're traditionally taken, they start the first week in April. The dirty little part of teaching this is all AP tests throughout the country are given on the exact same day, which sounds very fair. But if you go to school in Georgia and you start on you start school August 1, you've got an extra month to prepare. So our kids oftentimes are a month behind a lot of other places in their preparation for the test. So we've got more to do in less time, which is, pretty incredible that continue to do that amount of curriculum.
So I got a little bit of homework on this, and I'll continue to monitor some of the other data, and we'll bring it forward as it comes to fruition. Everybody okay?
Thanks, Steve. And I think you're still going strong with the opening day enrollment.
So this is the color. Don't you like the colors? So I'll try and shrink it a little bit. You can still see that, right?
Yes.
So this is our opening day enrollment, and we bring two numbers to the board, opening day, and then the 15th, I'll bring the October 1 enrollment. So this is for us September 14th, opening day enrollment. And the colors track the cohort, if you will, and the number in parentheses is the number per grade level that are in remote. So that's how this works. If you look at the bottom, we're at 949, which is down from last year. And as I wrote in board notes, one of the big factors of this is we had an increase of 32 homeschool students. And that's not uncommon. Actually, that's lighter than some of our neighboring districts. Through COVID, through the remote, through all this, that some are finding it to do homeschool a little bit less friction, a little bit more flexible. So we have a very, very large freshman class. That actually will be on track perhaps to break 100, which is always interesting. And this is our last small senior class. If you see 57 is small, but we'll then go to 85. And Michelle uses this especially for budgeting, and we give this to the teachers to budget as we try to project. It's going to be an volatile year because of the increase in homeschool and how do you budget. And there's always one of the interesting ideas. So we lost, 32 families chose to go to homeschool, which we respect. As we talked about at the finance committee 2 meetings ago, let's say that's about $4,000 per student, and there's $120,000 loss in revenue. But unless they were all in the same grade, it often doesn't result in a loss of staff. Yeah, and that when they're striated, is that the striated or when they're spread around throughout the entire grades, we don't get the staff saving. And we just don't get the loss in expense when we have 32 students, because you might say, oh, 32 students, we can cut a teacher. But you can't, because those 32 students aren't in the same section grade. So that's the struggle there. Now, because of the legislature, and it'll be interesting, I have to talk with Matt and Karen Pond, our data, we do get some revenue when the homeschoolers are in for some of the day. At the high school, it was really easy. When I was principal, I think probably the same thing with Chris and Rebecca. Sometimes homeschool comes in for chemistry and world language. Those are sometimes difficult to simulate at home if you don't want to have blow up your kitchen or things like that. So, and if they were in a half a day, we would get some revenue, and that was a change in legislature a few years ago. But now at the elementary and remote, it's going to be hard to quantify their participation. We will come back in 2 weeks with October 1, and if we're ready, we usually set the tuition at that date for our tuition program, which you'll see, Rob, I've also put a listening post about tuition at that same perspective meeting. Remember, you were talking about that. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Steve, just sticking with the 32 students doing homeschooling, I'm just curious if you think that's this is a temporary change because of where we are in the pandemic, and that many, I can't say all, but many of those students are expected to return once sort
I
of the
think so.
pandemic is over?
I think so. They didn't, you know, in the past when it was a little bit, I tried to meet with homeschool students, parents, and find out what, and some of them were work related, some of it were, you know, were religious based reasons. But with this kind, I really think it's about the current circumstance.
I also wonder how many kids would be, I know that we have some kids who have decided, their families have decided to go to private school during COVID times. And so I also wonder if we'll hopefully be able to welcome some of those kids back as well.
And I can give you, I can bring that data to you too as well. Ms. Bowe provides data to NESDEC when we do our projection for enrollment. And that is private school, that is home, all that goes into their actuarial study to try and predict the trends. So when we get closer, I can bring that data to you as well. Everybody okay? That's it for presentations and staff reports, but it's nice to get back into that.
No, it is. It's a little bit of returning back to normal in the normal schedule again. So thank you, Steve. So we'll move to items for board discussion. The first one, schooling in a global pandemic. So we're stepping right back into a non-normal time, I guess. And so the first item here is to unpack a little bit the move to remote learning over at the middle high school. And so, Steve, I don't know if you want to walk us through sort of
Sure.
the events that led up to it, and then the decision that was made, and hopefully this will get to some of the questions that we received earlier on in the meeting.
Happy to. So Friday afternoon, about 4 o'clock, I received a call from Amy Cook, HMHS school nurse. Steve, expect to hear from the Department of Health and Human Services this weekend. We have a family who are presenting some symptoms, and they're just waiting for their test. And so just expect to hear. And I said, okay. Talked to her for a few minutes. Saturday came, had a nice day on Saturday. Spent some time with my son, all that fun stuff. Saturday afternoon, no call from DHHS. Pretty happy about that. Then I think I was doing my typical Sunday blast around 6, 7 o'clock at night. I got the call from DHHS. So actually I got a text from the commissioner. The commissioner said, Steve, I gave your cell phone number to DHHS. DHHS called. So Ms. Cook's heads up was 2 students, same family, taking a test. May have symptoms, just be ready. So when the person from DHHS called, they said they've had 1 positive test. And I said, I wonder if that's connected to the ones that Amy gave me a heads up about. Amy didn't give me the name, which is fine. And I didn't have a name. I said, oh, we had a heads up about this. There was a mix up on the names. And at that point, I thought it was a different case than Amy had given me a heads up about. I think I texted Chris and said it was a different case and all that fun stuff. So the questions that the DHHS investigator asked was about our plan. What was our base plan? And we were in a hybrid, 50% in, 6 feet spread, full masks was our base plan. So those were our precautions. He felt very good about that. He said, that's great. What about lunch? And I said, lunch is 6 feet apart by themselves, straight ahead. That's great. He felt good about that. Buses, I told him we're getting very few people on buses. Again, it was a very positive call, not stress. He felt good about what we're doing, and I felt good about it. There was no indication at all that we would get to a level of closures for the number and where we were at. I talked to Amy, I texted with Amy. Jim, I think I called you Saturday night, and we talked about it. Andrew, did I talk to you too? Text you, all that fun stuff. So there's a lot of texting, a lot of calls. That night, I knew there would be a communication. I worked with wonderful people, so everybody sent me other superintendents' letters about when you write it out. So I had a lot of drafts of the letter to send out to the community. I drafted a letter. I sent it, out for just review in the morning, and went about my morning. I had the draft of the letter prepared. Actually, around 7:30, I was on my little exercise bike, and I got a text from Rebecca, because I sent the draft of my letter out to leadership. Rebecca said, "Steve, it's not one, it's two people, positive tests." And I said, I was only told by DHS one. So there's something a little funky. Then Amy texted me her she had an additional I referred DHS to Amy because they had more questions to ask about specifically schedules and about anybody was sick in the building and her stuff. So after me, they went to Amy. In the morning, Amy and I connected and found out it was two, and it was the two that she gave me a heads up about. But again, by 8 o'clock Sunday morning, our base precautions were strong, and it was just all systems go. Getting ready to put the letter out. I sent the Amy and I talked. So in the meantime, between Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon, DHS investigation uncovered that the contact tracing was necessary because of the possibility of a symptomatic student in our building for a couple weeks. So they extended the contact tracing. So they asked Amy Cook to call all our staff and find out if there was any staff members who were within 6 feet for a cumulative of 10 minutes since the start of school with possible symptomatic kids. And so when Amy told me that, and the number of teachers, that became it, not because we had a lot of cases in district, but because the DHS regulations were going to require the quarantining of staff who met that guideline. And after talking with Amy and getting DHHS the answer to their question, which is how many staff were within 6 feet for a cumulative of 10 minutes, those staff were going to be quarantined and not be in school. So about 100 text calls with Chris, Rebecca, Jim, Amy, Union Athletic Director, Chris, Amy, all around, determined with that number of staff by DHH regulations, quarantining, not being in school, we could not safely run school because if a staff member is out, we need someone to supervise those kids in school. So made the decision based on the number of staff quarantined under DHH guidelines to close, not because we had like the decision-making matrix is about the number of positives in your school. This was low number of positives, but high number of quarantines based on proximity and contact tracing of the students of concern. So that's what, so when I talked to Jim and I spoke, Chris and I spoke, Rebecca and I spoke, and felt honestly that we didn't have enough staff to cover those 40 to 50 blocks. The best thing we could do was close. And then came, all right, then in discussions with Chris and Rebecca, it's so what runs and what doesn't run based on a closure, not do a high number of tests, but to staffing availability. And those are two different areas. If we had, for example, 30 different students in our school, we'd be closing the school based on the confirmed case rate. This was closing a school based on a staffing availability. So CRTC, we run, Impact we run, and then we made the decision that, again, we're not closing because of confirmed cases, we're closing the staff that athletics was okay to run with communication with schools, as Jim, as you already alluded to. So I sent an email out originally, and then the time from that original email from 4 to about 7 is the contact tracing involved and the number of staff members that were expected to and required to and asked to quarantine. And then it became early in the day, I talked to Matt Stone about updating our all-call system to get that ready just in case we need it, made the all-call and sent another email. And that night, it was probably 150 emails with staff and community. I think I might have been discombobulated, but I think I hit most of it.
No, I think you got it, Steve. So can you just, how many Have we had more confirmed cases in the schools, or is it still just the two students?
I have not been informed of any additional cases. I think there's, yeah, so I have not, no.
And then the only other question I've received, and so I think you can maybe talk about it a little bit. So, you know, I think people were surprised that there were multiple cases in the school, but when the email first went out, you know, we didn't immediately plan to close the school. If you look at our decision-making matrix, we sort of have that laid out that we would close. And so I just wonder if you want to just address that quickly.
Sure. So the decision, the closing of school with a test is to allow for two things. One is for cleaning of the school and the other is for contact tracing. Well, the last day of the students with the confirmed cases were in our school was September 21st. The school had been cleaned multiple days and multiple times. And the DHS felt they had a handle on the contact tracing and was working it through. I think some information from Saturday night, the information that I was told from the DHS worker changed from Saturday night at 6 o'clock to Sunday at 7 o'clock. And that's what happened. And that information moved the contact tracing to staff. With students in our model are 6 feet and pretty still. Staff are mobile. And so that's why it is possible for a student to be 6 feet apart with a mask and not have that 10-minute barrier. But staff have that 10-minute barrier because staff, we want that. I mean, they are mobile. They do, you know, they help kids. They talk with kids. And I think that's what happened. But it's a little bit, I mean, when I had a chance, I talked to 2 different DHS workers about 5 times. And at the end of it, when I called them and told them that we've decided to close because of staffing availability. And I did say that it's changed so drastically from Saturday night to Sunday. And they said, Steve, that's what happens as the investigators work, they kind of peel back the onion and get more information, and that's how sometimes it unfolds. But Saturday night, no indication at all that this was going to be a closure. And then Sunday night, with staffing availability, Chris, Rebecca, Amy, and Jim, we all agreed that there was no way to run a school when, I don't know, 10%, you know, 8% of your faculty on that night before, we couldn't cover. We just couldn't cover.
Thanks, Steve. Other questions for Steve? Yeah.
So I suppose the reality of this is our matrix is a good tool, I suppose, but in reality, I mean, it seems like the contact tracing is going to be, you know, driving the train here to some degree, because you have a couple kids, they are going to be in contact with teachers. That's going to happen, right? So,
yep.
So this is, I mean, maybe we didn't quite think of it this way, but as it played out, I mean, it's not a surprising outcome that I guess the community should understand, right?
No, and it is case by case. I spoke with one teacher who felt very, very strongly that was not within 6 feet of that student at all. You know, so it can be style, it can be what you're doing in class during those days, about the proximity principle. But ultimately, as we talked about at leadership today, all the DHHS work was trying to make sure we don't get to limit the spread. Right. And that's, and we did that. And I know it's inconvenience, and everybody knows me in snow days. I don't like I like school. I like kids in. And I think if you ask Rebecca especially, she knows that I don't want to cancel school. We like kids in school, but not, you know, we have to have them in safely, and we have to do it in a way that makes sure that we don't contribute to the spread in our population, because we care about everybody.
Right. And I guess my point is to the community. I mean, as I looked at some of the correspondence we got, I mean, flexibility is important here, and people have to understand, you know, even if the number of cases is low, what we learned from this is the contacts are important, how many contacts there were. And in a small district like ours with not, you know, leanly staffed, this very well could happen. And so, and we just have to be nimble about how we handle it, seems to be the right outcome. So that was no way a criticism of the school. It's just pointing out the reality of the situation, at least it seems to me. So
absolutely.
So I've been asked a couple questions. This is not my question. This is a question I just can't answer, Steve. There's people out in the medical field who are exposed to COVID. They're wearing a mask, just like our teachers are. But we're going to work still regardless. Why is it that even though our teachers are still protected, that we are still having this trace of everyone going quarantine when these medical professionals aren't, for example? That's a question I just couldn't answer to the community.
Sure. And when the original DHHS call, they said repeatedly that it's within 6 feet for 10 minutes, regardless of mask. And I said I didn't know why. And they said that's the standard in schools. And I think some community members have asked us questions about how secure can you be that the masks, right, are fully covered. And these aren't, I've seen Amy Cook dress, her PPE is drastically different than my PPE. The medical profession PPE of a KN95 mask, shield, and I think some of our staff have been trained in this in donning this PPE. So I think it's the type of PPE, the security of the PPE, the number of kids that we have, and the structure of it. But in full transparency, there wasn't a lot of pushback with me with DHHS. I didn't, I explained to them our base precautions. I did ask them why, and talking with Amy in her discussions, they felt if we were a school, so some schools that have, when you're in your seat, no mask. And Amy felt if they were in their seat with no mask, the entire class would be quarantined. Where we are just those within 6 feet. So I think it does help limit the amount of quarantine because of our base precautions. But I was surprised. But remember, we're not N95 or KN95 masks. We are cloth masks for everyone. So, but I get the frustration, Norm. I really do. But I think if we get through this, it was really a week and a day, because a week and a day, and if we can limit the spread and we can learn from this and put the pivoting in. At the very beginning of the plan, I knew that DHHS would have a big role in advising me as superintendent about what school. They couldn't tell if we could run school with the number of staff who were quarantined, right? That's not their decision. But if they said, Steve, you've got 10, we're going to close you, that's their decision. But because of their requirement on the quarantine rate, we couldn't staff the building. But it was my decision based on safely keeping kids in the building learning. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Steve.
I have a couple questions. And I think it's really interesting that DHHS said, and I think it's worth noting that regardless of masks, 6 feet or not, they still need to quarantine. I'm wondering if you have any, and I know it's been pretty quick, but if we have any ideas or solutions or ways that we can think of to help prevent this from happening in the future. Just listening to the principal's remarks, it's so clear that being in hybrid has been really wonderful for folks. And so I'm just wondering what we've learned from this, if anything, to prevent it from happening again. And I guess it also loops into a second question, which you might have to answer first, of the 10 minutes, is it cumulative 10 minutes or 10 minutes, it's cumulative? Okay, so it's a minute here and a minute there. Okay.
Exactly. And because of length of time, staff might not necessarily be sure, but yes, that was a specific question, cumulative. And I think our base plan is good. I think the screening helps, right? It begins with a screening, then it begins with mask wearing, and then it supports our 6 feet. But I think those are the key components for us, right? I got to make sure that my daughter, if she has any symptoms, doesn't go to school. Because that's I have to own that as dad, even though obviously she's a little older, but that I just have to own that piece, and then continue to wear masks, so I think the structure is in place, but I get it. I mean, we're all learning about this, but now at least we know it's cumulative, and we know that 6 feet is really essential.
I mean, I'll hop in quick because I do think, Steve mentioned it, but I just want to reinforce. I do think one of the things that we can do to avoid this is if parents, if your child is sick or showing signs of being sick, don't send them to school. Because Steve mentioned this was a symptomatic, there it goes, I forced it out. Symptomatic students, and so like they had, they had symptoms that we screened for, that were asking students not to come to school. And so I just want to reinforce that, when we went to this model, we all talked about this is, we're all sort of in this together, and that, we all had to be cautious, and we all had to, make sure that we're not, sending sick teachers, sick children into school, because this is the consequence of it when that happens. And so anyway, it just reinforces to me that we should be doing that screening, and that, parents should be probably acting out of abundance of caution. Like if your kid has sniffles, if they're not feeling well, the safer bet is to not send them to school, because you don't know. So. Norm?
Well, just real quickly. So just so I'm clear, so if my child has a cold and they go to school, Bill sends them home, they have to, just to be clear, they have to get a COVID test to come back. Is that what just to make sure I have this correct and it's clear, because cold and flu season's coming up.
Right.
People are going to be getting sick, and some people are not going to have COVID. And there's going to be this issue where, rushback, I guess you could say, maybe from the community saying, I'm not going to get a COVID test for my child because they just have a cold. So like, what is that step per se? So cold and flu season is right around the corner.
Right. There are symptoms that I talked to Nicole. Yes, and they need to have a COVID test before they come back. One of the things that we're trying to do, and in all our schools, is our nurses are working on the 15-minute quick test. If you saw, I think it was in the paper yesterday, that 25,000 are coming, to the state. And our nurses, it's like a credit card, and the nurses would be able to do a 15-minute COVID test right there in the nurse's office. But yeah, I think that's when someone goes down to the office, has symptoms, you can take it then in 15 minutes. So our nurses, I know Michelle has provided any regulatory support to those requests. But that's, because you're right, you don't know if that cold system is COVID, and if you guess wrong, it could fracture the hybrid model. And that's how it's all this together. But it would be a big help if our nurses can give a 15-minute quick test. So, that will help families. And I know Nicole, she's on the I think it's Thursday now, calls with Dr. Chan. All our nurses are, and they're encouraging that as much as possible. I did not see in the paper, though, that school nurses were in the first wave of the quick test.
So Steve, one of the documents that we shared with our faculty, and I believe we had also sent it home to our parents, that if a student does not get a test, they are out of the school, quarantining for 10 days from the onset of any symptom.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Again, we're trying to work together and do the best we can, trying to keep school operating safely without spread, and supporting our faculty and teachers. And it was frustrating, but I sensed the frustration. I got the frustration, but at least we'll talk in a few minutes. We're looking at the dashboard. There's a school-based dashboard, and there's no new. Hopefully, I'll get informed as a superintendent of any new cases, but there's no new cases on the dashboard. So. Everybody okay?
Thanks, Steve. So the next item, excuse me, is the status report on the hybrid model. And I know we've received some of that already, but I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
The only piece, and Chris and Rebecca and I and a lot of teachers is trying to take a look at the high school schedule. And I think we'll talk about this, Jim, when we get to some other documentations. It's an interesting piece. Chris has been very consistent about instructional time and the goal. And one thing that may come forward in working with faculty is an adjustment to the high school schedule. And Chris and Rebecca can speak to it, trying to increase instructional time, perhaps a 1-day remote straight 8 period or some piece. That way every student would see their teacher once remotely and once in person. Trying to align, or one of the feedback that we all got, even my superintendent, is can we align the secondary school more with the elementary school and support families there? So we're trying to look at, and we're going to talk in about 2 minutes, actually, about the next piece. we completely understand that families have built their work schedule and pieces around the hybrid, the lengthy rotation. So it's trying to thread this needle. As your superintendent and discussing with Chris and Rebecca, I think what's best for kids is probably Monday is a remote day. You see all eight periods, and you set the week. Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday are your rotations. You see everybody. It also, Michelle loves the fact that we could maybe really clean on Mondays, from her standpoint and supporting the schools that she wants to so much. But how do you do that? Understanding all the commitment that the family's done, articulating their work schedule is the balance, and then how do you do it for? But we always want to be improvement based. We always want to receive feedback. We always want to do what's best for kids. Those are our guiding principles in trying to figure this out.
So Steve, do you want to talk about some of that scheduling now, or do you want to wait till later in the meeting?
We can talk about process later on, but I think Chris and Rebecca are so improvement focused. I just want to put it out that as we look at our status for a hybrid, we may be able to do this better.
All right, any questions at this point for Steve?
And I just wanted to verify that this is a scheduling, the possibility of a scheduling change, sorry, only at our secondary school, correct? Because it sounds to me from Bill and Amy like the hybrid schedule at the elementary school has been working pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, we're always open to feedback, and one of the things, Bill alluded to it, we want to make sure that teachers have planning time, PLC time, and maybe he made the schools with the bus company moved that 15 minutes, which does help for PLCs. We're always looking at everything, Andrea. We always want to make sure that we are doing what's best for kids. But the vast majority of feedback that I got from parents, I'm sure was about the secondary level, because it's a 4-day rotation, and as opposed to every other. So I think the sense of urgency that I have right now is can we support planning at the elementary schools? I think Bill's done that, and then it's how do we align and make sure we have a little bit more face-to-face, even if it's remote face-to-face with kids at the secondary level. That's the needle we're trying to thread.
Just for clarity, you're putting this out there now as an idea, but this is still on the drawing board, right? And sometimes
Correct.
there's confusion in the messaging. There is no change at this time, correct?
There is no change at this time, but it's a status report for the model. We are looking to improve and but being respectful of schedules as well. It's a unique piece because it's not just simply our little world now. It's not just changing a schedule. We're actually changing family schedules too.
Right.
All right, any other questions on this item, on the hybrid model and where we're at? All right, so if not, we can look ahead to the winter schedule.
So this is, as I like to say when I call Jim, when you're driving around or walking around. So we met as a leadership team today. We know, Norm already alluded to the cold and flu season and impact on symptoms and how that's going to impact our ability to function. Then right now, we are in a situation where if you leave New England, you're quarantined for a couple of weeks before you can come back into the classroom, so you teach remotely. So the area of just reflection is Thanksgiving and the December break, the Christmas break. For example, if we had 5 teachers during Thanksgiving go to Pennsylvania and see their families, they would be under our current guidelines, they would be quarantining, and that would be very difficult for our schools to cover. So schools are starting to reflect upon and think about the school model during the holiday season, when there is more time and there more urgency to go see family outside of New England. And it's also, as Michelle brought up today at leadership, there's also CDC requirements about the level of risk even when you stay home, right? And how many people come in, like if someone from Pennsylvania comes to your house for the celebration. So one school in their back to school plan said, we're going remote Thanksgiving all the way to March, because they anticipated the cold and flu and they anticipated difficulties with quarantine on travel. So I'm trying to be respectful of families, that if we are going to look at Thanksgiving, so there's 3.5 weeks from Thanksgiving to the December break. And if it's the 2 weeks of the Sunday of Thanksgiving, if we went automatic quarantine, right, we went fully remote for 2 weeks, that would take care of all those concerns. So trying to get the board to start thinking about operating a school in a global pandemic during a holiday season with the expectation of quarantining when you travel outside of our area, or so the commissioner said at the commissioner meeting this week that DHHS and DOE would be producing some guidelines for holiday operating the school in the holidays. But this was a couple of things that we talked about today. Do we want to get some, for planning purposes, trying to get some data from families or from staff about who is planning, to travel. And I've had lots of discussions and understand family is very, very important. And there's people who need to make some family decisions, but how do we operate a school, and how do we give families enough notice, and how do we plan for this, as opposed to Jim calling you on Wednesday of Thanksgiving, hey, should we have school on Monday? The hope here was that we can start thinking about it and give plenty of notice if we're going to change our model due to the expectations and circumstances surrounding the holidays. That was the goal of this agenda.
Steve, did anybody at DHS talk about, I noticed yesterday in the news that Boston is now red, or in the red zone. Have they talked about the possibility that New England, or New Hampshire anyway, could get shrunk to the Mass line, or?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I've not heard that yet, and I didn't know that. I didn't look, I just look at New Hampshire, so I appreciate that information.
I think it's a great idea to start gathering some information. I think that sounds really smart. And I also, sort of as we are now with some of our kids remote at the secondary level and some in hybrid, I think it would be interesting to see who's traveling and who is not having visitors. Maybe I'm an internal optimist, but if enough people aren't moving, perhaps we could even do something. But I mean, we can guess all we want. I think without the information, it's like throwing spaghetti at a wall.
Are you thinking like a survey, Andrea, like to kind of check the community, see who's going away for Thanksgiving? I mean,
yeah, I think it would have to be a survey. I can't think of any other way.
Call each person. No. It's interesting thought process, getting a survey, and then would it be like the family would have to commit? So we'd have like a number of how many students are going. I don't know the algorithm for that or something.
Well, it feels like if you're going to do a survey, it feels less, it's harder first to survey like all the families, and also it's more of the teachers, right? Because it's really, because if you're a student and your family travels, you're supposed to quarantine for 14 days, and we have ways for those students, if we knew that they were traveling, that they could get materials or do some remote instruction. It would take work, but we could probably do that. But it's really the availability of staff, because if we had 25 staff
right.
that are traveling,
well,
we
want to know the overall numbers, because if we have a huge percentage that are in a quarantine, even from a student's perspective, we may be doing a better job educating them. What I saw this week, which was fully in remote, with real teaching going on, as opposed to thinking of assignments. I agree with Andrea. The data will drive what's the right decision, it seems to me. How many people are we affecting by being open versus being closed? So I would recommend we do a survey trying to get people winter plans between Thanksgiving and February vacation to figure out what that looks like.
But it also, Seth, to do devil's advocate a little bit, is that it's cold and flu season. you know, and we go back to the whole, you know, people traveling, people are still going to be getting sick around that time. And then we're going back to this issue of, you know, kids not being sick and then, you know, not having COVID or having COVID. It's like, where do we minimize that risk or something like that? That's where I'm trying to also think about this too in the situation.
And I'm being a little sensitive to, I guess if we went with the, you know, closure around Thanksgiving through Christmas, through the winter holiday into, you know, January, that feels like a very long time. Like, I don't know how many weeks I can say this, about 6 weeks, give or take, of
5.5.
less impact probably on our you know, middle high school students, but probably a lot more impact on our elementary students. And just again, just thinking about what that 6 week means for, you know, for not seeing students in person. We've already talked about all that. So, but you know, how do we make that decision? Because I think if it was really just for the middle high school, I would have less angst about it. But I do wonder, again, you know, we've been doing well in our Maple Street and Harold Martin, and you know, a loss of 6 weeks feels like a lot. And so I'm struggling with, not that it's not the right decision, it's just that feels harder.
I don't think it's that. I agree with you, Jim. I'm doubtful that the data will turn up that tons of people are traveling through this period. That's my instinct, but you would want to know. I think we would just want to know to make the right decision. I mean, I'm not advocating that that's where it's going to come out. I doubt it is, but like it's Steve. I mean, I think is that what you're asking really? Like what is the data to figure out what's the right thing? Because you don't know, right?
Yeah, no, I think that would be, I think we talked about that today. Yeah, I'm trying to get some data and look at, I'm trying to put this on people's radar. So we can make a decision to help families, because it just goes so quick. So this is me about driving around, trying to figure this stuff out and put it on people's radar and figure out a process so that we make the best decision, be respectful to families over time.
And I think, oh, you go.
I was going to say, I think that the other nice part about a survey is it can also be an educational tool, because I know for us, we weren't really thinking about traveling at all, and then, you know, thought like, well, maybe, and then had the realization that we would have to quarantine our child who's in hybrid for 2 weeks. And it was like, oh, well, that changes everything. But with so much going on right now, I don't know if this is necessarily top of mind for folks. So that's just an added benefit of doing a survey sooner rather than later, is it can help folks, if they have not made up their mind as to what their travel plans are, it could help solidify some of that.
I mean, I also want to play a little bit of a position that not all of us can have our children be in remote the whole time with work. And that's something we have to be really cautious of, you know, that if we're going to have all this information of, you know, being done in school for 5.5 weeks, that's a lot for some parents who can't find a place for their child. So we got to be a little sensitive to that also, just in this discussion, that if we decide to do that, it's a lot on the people who are trying to keep their job, you know, during a public health crisis. So keeping students safe, keeping parents employed, teachers safe, you know, there's a lot that goes into this process, but we want to be able to educate our students also. So,
and I think that gets to Steve's point around timing and sort of the reason, because if we want to get this information, we probably should do that sooner than later, so that we can make a decision, and no matter whatever the decision is, in enough time that, you know, families can adjust if they need to. So Steve was, oh, I'm sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
I think I'm going to ask the exact question you're going to ask. So you ask first.
Oh man, you're a mind reader. Let's see how accurate I am. So I was just going to ask Steve if you had everything you needed out of this conversation, or at least feel that you've gotten some direction from the board.
Yeah, it's happy to put together. I agree with Andrea that a survey would be educational, get people to start thinking about the impact, and also give us some data to come back. And certainly it's for, as Amy said today, it's for planning purposes only. We're not trying to understand what people are doing in their lives. We respect their privacy, but just for planning purposes, so we can start getting our heads around having school, what kind of model would be most effective and safe during that time period.
Do you think that this is something that we would be able to send out between now and our next school board meeting, which is in 2 weeks? so
I
that
do.
we would have that information? Okay. I just think before the next meeting would be great, because then there's only a month until
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and it just goes so quickly.
No, I think that's, I think that 2-week break, between meetings as opposed to every week, gives us a little bit of time to do some work in between, which I like. And I've got some great survey partners like Bill and stuff who will put this together for us.
Perfect. All right.
Is that okay?
No, that sounds great.
Thank you. I appreciate that discussion very much. It helps a lot. So, a couple of just quick things. Even though it's crazy, we're going to be in state tournament season for our fall sports, and then just bringing forward that the recommendation. One thing is we do have a state dashboard now, so you can look at any school and find out how many cases in that school, whether it's within our regional cohort or if we go outside of our region during the state tournament, which we think is a good thing. But the hope is that we can provide our students the opportunity to participate in state tournaments. In discussions with the building principal and the athletic director, I think we'd follow the same protocol. Dan would talk to the athletic director. I'd talk to the superintendent about our mask policy and do everything we can to encourage that. However, as Dan alluded to, with in some thoughts, higher stakes, right? A team may not want to play that first time in a tournament with a mask. We'll do everything we can for it. But just continue based on the numbers and the data driving this decision, and certainly what's going on in our schools, but provide the opportunity for kids to participate in state tournaments. Just making sure that that's in support of the board's vision for fall sports.
Any questions or concerns from what Steve just laid out? Great, thanks, Steve.
We'll keep you posted. It's amazing. 2 weeks we could be in tournament season. It just started, but thank you. I appreciate your support. I'm going to share this. So decision making, everybody okay? So, and this is an update. Everybody see that okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. So this is where we're at. This was as of this morning. We're up to 2.5 cases per 1,000. That would put us here in yellow. And I think that's more on the higher end over the recent. I think it's pretty close to, and remember, we're now using the DHHS daily report that they put out for New Hampshire. And so that was as of today, October 1. This will go up on the web. And I think as Matt, we have a new website, but we'll keep building it and make sure that the decision-making matrix. So if we did have a test, we would follow, again, we went over that already, right? The last day the student was in was a week ago. So the clean and contact tracing was outside of this matrix. Everybody okay?
Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
So if there's no other questions on the matrix, we can just move into the school board schedule.
How's that? Right there. You can see that. Can you see that?
We can.
So I'm kind of blind.
You're getting good at this.
So I've laid out all the meetings between now and budget. This is tonight. And we're going to talk, and when we get to the financial section, about having a public hearing at our next meeting. But Rob, this is where we're going to set the tuition rate. It seemed like a nice time to have the listening post about tuition, if that makes sense. And we can talk about the laws requiring it, the values, and the opportunities. We'll have a September financial. I hope that the board will be ready to give budget guidance to the leadership team. We'll set the tuition rate. We'll have a building committee norm during that. And Seth and Andrea will have to finish up our discrimination policy for third reading, because it's required, I think, by law by that date. November 5th, that'll be central office. So Mandy, Matt, Michelle, and I will provide reports. And because all administrators will be there, I've planned an update on the YRBS, if that's okay, to present the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We do that every 2 years, if that's okay. And that's usually a little bit. And then in the 19th, October, we'll have a financial. Believe it or not, we're going to start talking calendar, because we have a contractual requirement to have the calendar done by the third meeting in December. So if it's not the 19th, sometimes we slide it to the 4th. What's it, over promise, over deliver, under promise, something like that. I don't know, something like that. I always get that messed up. But we'll have calendar, and then, and this is, and if there's a different approach to the budget presentation, I'm certainly not fixed on that, but typically December is when the superintendent presents the expense budget. And then the 11th, the board typically says, Steve, let's take a look at a reduction here. So it's reductions in the expense budget, and then we do revenues, trusts, and all that piece. And then on the 18th, we put it together and actually have a tax rate for you. Because if we want to take, we don't want to put that much in the trust, we don't want to put that much, then we have a tax rate. And then depending on some years, we finished it on the 18th. The third meeting was a vote. Some years it was the 4th. Some years, so December 22nd is a Tuesday. It's an off cycle because I think Thursday is so I don't think we want to meet that day. And or we can slide it to January 7th. And I haven't heard, Norm, I don't know if the budget committee has set their hearing schedule yet. Because I haven't received that. I usually put that in and then we go through March. So things to think about. A joint meeting with the select board. We usually do that in October. I think that I left a message for Neil to start thinking about that, and we can reach out. It would be a Zoom meeting, obviously. We've done joint meetings with the budget committees. We don't have to, but we have done those in the past. Oh, I forgot. I did read the report. Sorry, October 15th. Hazard, Young, and Atia will have the profile according to their, so that I'll add that to the 15th. You with me? The profile of the superintendent, something like that. And we've talked about it. I don't know if I see a good spot in the calendar for a school board retreat, just to be honest with you. But I wanted to throw it up there because it has been mentioned. So that's my thoughts on putting together the plan from now through budget. If anything offends your sensibilities, I'm happy to change it.
One thing that in my last budget committee meeting, we had discussed we need to provide some information to the budget committee regarding fixed numbers that are going into our budget process, and our, like, the CIP, the bond, I believe Jim or Andrew will be coming to the budget committee meeting to discuss it, since they're on that committee. That is October 14th, and our next meeting is October 15th. So I guess my question is, so there's no quorum or anything, how is that information going to be worked with between, being able to present that to the budget committee meeting and gathered in time? Because our next meeting is after that, and I need information for that. No, Rob and I have started working a little bit on the budget process, discussing it with Michelle and with Steve. There's some things that we're starting to get going, but they had made it very clear to me that if we wanted guidance from them to talk about this budget or ideas, to use them. So I, as a board member, I'm happy to entertain a joint meeting with the budget committee. I think it'd be great for this board, as a board, to have a discussion with them about our long-term goals or whatever is needed in that. In that discussion with them, I think it's important that it's not always about the tax rate in the beginning. It's about what do we want to invest into the schools that helps our students, that's, if it's a position, if it's something for special education, if it's our facilities. The finish line obviously is a tax rate, which we have to discuss about, and that starts with charging Steve with specific increases in his team's leadership budget. But I think it might be healthy for us to have a discussion with them on a goal that we're looking to, or just in my next meeting, I can give them a report of what we want to establish. I just don't have a window to collect all that information because we don't meet till October 15th.
because I don't know. I guess I'm just wondering, like, so our schedule's to have that conversation on the 15th, and it feels like we can just bring that conversation to the budget committee at their next meeting. I mean, I guess why do they need that on the 14th as opposed?
They asked for this, Jim, about a month ago. You know, and we had a discussion about that where, you know, I brought to you guys the next day that they were asking for information, you know, regarding SCIP big ticket items, the bond. You know, Steve and I had a discussion with Rob about the percentage on the tax rate, for example, for retirement for our teachers. That's mandated by state law, correct, Steve?
Yes.
So there's specific values that are locked into this future budget that I want to have a clear understanding that I can bring to this meeting that I've been asked to. I think waiting 2 months out, I don't think is the right thing.
So Jim and I and Andrea and Michelle are ready to have a CIP meeting next week. Make sure that information is ready for the 14th. We've started those discussions. I thought that was the request for the budget committee was the CIP for the 14th. I didn't realize it was overall budget.
No. It's just big ticket items or stuff that we are planning on having. So that CIP is correct. Then we have our bond. But if we have stuff that's already been committed, like you mentioned in our finance committee meeting, that has an overall tax impact, I think it's important to share. Give them a clear picture of what is committed to in this budget process.
And I think the finance committee, you know, updating the budget committee and the finance committee, because we talked about the budget drivers.
Yeah.
And so if you reported the finance committee budget driver discussion and the CIP that Michelle, Andrea, Jim, and I will have. Okay. Does that feel that you'll be granting or at least providing the budget committee with what they need? Because that's all that I thought. If I planned this incorrectly, I apologize.
No, you're 100%. Maybe I'm sorry for misspeaking. I think that is the right path. We have a finance meeting on that Wednesday also, which we'll be able to collaborate the information before then so we can give it to them. I just want to make sure that we didn't need to have this meeting of what was collaborated from the CIP and to be all on the same page with it.
No, I mean, and now when we talk about this with the budget committee, I mean, they'll have to understand that none of this is final. I mean,
of course.
CIP and we're bringing it forward, but that's the board hasn't voted on it. We haven't put it together with the full budget. So, so anyway, I think, you know, it's all preliminary. It's not set up. So anyway, but I think we can have that conversation, and I think we'll be set to have it, but it may change because this board may decide that.
Am I the one presenting the CIP to the budget committee?
No, you've asked us to.
So one of you guys will be coming to the meeting to present it. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay.
So this is absolutely tentative. If there's topics that you would like omitted or included, we're happy to do that. But this will be the framework that I'll include in every packet for a while and update it. I did also ask the leadership team, there might be some things that they want to bring forward to the board. And so it's a flexible document with a structure that hopefully provides you with what you need. Does that work? And I don't know if you caught it. I demoted all those guys. I got them out of, I demoted them during that. I apologize to them. I was supposed to do that like a half hour earlier, but they are so nice and gracious. They didn't even text me or anything saying Steve. So they're just wonderful people.
I thought I had done something. I shrunk.
That was all me. But I apologize to those wonderful people who stuck in. They get tired of listening to me, just so you know. They listen to me too much.
Steve, I can't believe that. Anything else on the schedule? And Norm, it looks like I'll be doing the budget committee. So we can talk before the 14th to make sure that, you know, I have everything. We're all set to go.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. And sorry for the misunderstanding, Steve. I
just want to make sure that
I put my heart into everything. You know that.
I just want you to make sure I support you. Michelle and I want to support you getting all the information that you need.
You guys have done great. You guys do great, and I appreciate it.
I guess I just have one quick question for Rob and Norm. I don't know, is there anything coming out of the finance committee that would alter the presentation format for our budget, or do you not have that information quite yet?
No, we'll talk about that when we do the finance update from We can do that.
Great, thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else on the schedule, we'll move under personnel. And I think the first item for our discussion and a vote would be on the HEA memo of agreement on working conditions. And so that, I know all the board members have seen it, and just so we remember process, this is still a non-public document until we vote to approve it. And then such time we can then discuss it and we'll walk through it if it's approved. And the only other thing I'll add is that the HEA did approve the document, I think yesterday. And so, and just in terms of process, I just want to start by thanking the HEA, Andrea, Steve, and I, and Michelle. I don't know how many meetings, I didn't go back and count, but it was probably at least 6 or 7 meetings that we had working through this document in a collaborative manner to sort of get it to where it is for working conditions. And so I just want to thank the HEA for their work to bring this forward. And so with that, I think Andrea, Steve, or I can answer any process questions here if anybody has them. And then what I would do once those are answered is we'll do the action item now, and so then we can discuss the specifics if that's okay. So if there's any process questions, now's the time. All right, no questions on process. So what I would do is I would ask if there's a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the memorandum of agreement on working conditions with the Hopkinton Education Association.
Moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none. Norm?
Norm Gupel is a yes.
Rob?
Rob Nato is a yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Seth?
Seth A-Frame, yes.
All right, and Jim O'Brien is a yes. And so the MOA has been approved. And so I don't know, Steve, if you have access and can share the document. And so what I'll do is, there we go, let me rearrange my screen here a little bit. I'm going to walk us just through, probably not everything, but I'll try to walk us through some of the higher points. I'm not quite sure. Let's see.
Can you see that okay? Is that?
I can. Well, I'm just going to do it. People will just have to bear with me looking at a different screen. I apologize. So as we said, this was a negotiation on working conditions. So we, what, about a month ago, give or take, we had a first memorandum of agreement on health and safety, which included discussions, or as everybody remembers, around masks, 6-foot separations, and some of the procedures that we've been put in place since school started. So this MOA was really around, working conditions. So how has our experience with COVID and the hybrid model changed? How HEA members and our teachers are going about their work business. And that is something that we're obligated to negotiate if there are changes to those working conditions. And so that's sort of the setup for why we did this. So the first one here is around training and reopening plans. And that seems pretty basic, that, as we go into a reopening plan, that we would provide appropriate training for our teachers in order to comply, in order to be able to work in these conditions, which we have been doing. I know Steve and his team and the administration have been doing trainings to make sure that everybody is safe and they understand how the changes to the hybrid model is affecting their working conditions. Steve, if you want to scroll. So we had a lot of discussions with the union around, remote instructions and synchronous teaching. And these are different models. These are different ways of teaching than I think, I think everybody's used to, never mind just our teachers, but our teachers as well as our students are used to. And so there are some things around remote instruction really that we just wanted to make sure that that there, if there's a teacher doing remote instruction or teachers teaching remotely, that they have adequate support in the classroom in order, because it's hard for a teacher to maintain both, well, if they're not in the classroom, it's hard for a teacher to remain active in the classroom. And so having the facilitator in the classroom is really important. And so that we want to make sure that was there. And then the synchronous teaching that we've talked about when we set the hybrid model up, and I know we're still, shooting for. I just wanted to make sure that some of the employees are getting the right tools in order to be successful in this model. That it's not as easy as maybe just opening a laptop, but there's other tools, in that we are providing adequate support for those tools so that a synchronous model can work. And that, we just want to ensure that the teacher who's teaching in the classroom setting isn't required to be the primary supervisor for the child who is on the receiving end or at home on their computer. And so, that seems pretty straightforward, but it may not be. And so we just wanted to ensure, our employees, that they're not responsible for that child in their home setting. That's really for the parents or guardians to be responsible for. I think you could skip over this one, Steve. So one of the concerns that it's not just here in Hopkinton, it's a concern, I think, across the country and remote instruction is just, are their teachers going to be videotaped and then their images being used in social media and other places? And so, by New Hampshire statute, recording it's a total voluntary if you're going to be recording these types of private exchanges. And so we just wanted to ensure that everybody knew that if this happened, if there was recordings, that it would be they would be reported to law enforcement, and that is a violation of state statute. It's an added protection that we felt was important, that teachers and students weren't being recorded without their voluntary permission. Steve, you want to keep scrolling down to, there we go. One of the, and this is in almost every workplace, this observations and evaluation. I know in my workplace, when I get my annual review at the end of the year, the the different circumstances that we're all facing in COVID need to be brought into consideration as all of our employees are being evaluated. Like, none of us are doing the same job the same way that we were doing it pre-COVID times. And so this is really just a nod to, our evaluations of our employees are going to take that into consideration, which is the right thing to do. And that, as our administrators do conduct evaluations at any time, they sit in classes and they observe how teachers are teaching. It's a little easier now to do those because we're in we're in a remote environment in a lot of ways. And so this is really just a nod that we're not going to do extra ones, that we're going to follow sort of the same guidelines and procedures, treating teachers the way we've normally treated them. I think Steve would have said that's good because we don't have the time or the capacity to do a lot of these extra observations. But we feel that wouldn't be fair. We don't want to do that. And Steve, if you want to scroll down, I think, so the Schedule B here is something that's come up. I think it came up in our meetings as force majeure. I think that's the fun way to say it. And this is really just a provision that if we have Schedule B contracts, that if circumstances change in that Schedule B position, either isn't needed at the beginning of it, or during the course of the school year, we go into a different environment and that service is no longer available, that we would pay that employee for the time that they spent doing the work, but we wouldn't need to pay them for the entire contract if that entire contract wasn't being executed because of circumstances. I think that made sense the way I described it. All right, I got a thumbs up, so it must. Yep, you can keep going, Steve. And so this is this piece is kind of harkens back to the conversation that we had a little bit ago around the high school schedule. There were, I think, several issues that we had discussed with the union that really came down to scheduling. That the solution to those challenges was built around the schedule. And so I think we all felt that as we've been in school for a couple weeks, we've learned a lot. And I think as we set up this hybrid model, as the board voted and set this up, we talked a lot about adaptive management, that as we learned, we knew we were going to have to make changes, both to how we were doing in-classroom instruction and also to the schedule as we move forward. And so really what we want to do is work cooperatively with the HEA on the scheduling. So I have the administration and leadership team, working with the teachers, and then to bring forward to the board for consideration changes to the schedule. And this, the hope is that we can make those changes, or at least make the decision to make those changes on or before October 31st. And then this laid out what some of those changes may be. So these aren't requirements. The way this is written, neither 1, 2, or 3 are requirements of us. They're more examples of things that we could look at. We've talked about the high school and middle school schedules. And there were some conversations around, looking at the length of school days, as well as providing remote days for all students. So my expectation is that, Steve and his team will be working with the HEA, and then bring some ideas back to us to see if there are, like we talked about the high school, rearranging their schedule and doing it in such a way that we can get community input. I mean, I think that was something that we talked a lot about. Our need, I think, before we make any of these scheduling adjustments, they're going to impact families across the district, that we provide the time for those families to provide input to us about how those changes may impact them, and ensure that they're the right changes to make. And so we built that into here as well, that was something very important, because we don't want to we don't want to go about making changes without getting the input of parents and families. Andrea or Steve or Michelle, did I miss anything? If you guys want to add anything, even if I didn't miss anything, you all sat through all the same meetings I did.
Good job.
I have a quick comment.
Please.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped in making this agreement. I know it's a lot of work. I know it's many hours, and I just wanted to say thank you to Andrea, Jim, Steve, and the other party too, for countless hours. So thank you.
There's no lights on.
Any other questions or comments? Steve has to turn on some lights.
A little commercial break there for the community.
All right, so Steve, so this will be made available on the website, I assume, in the next couple of days, so the community has access to it.
Typically I wait for signatures. So Jim and Scott, if you're out there, if you want to come over and sign it tomorrow, I like to put up the one with I like to put it up with signatures. But as soon as I get signatures, next couple of days, we'll get it up.
Perfect. And I can come by tomorrow and do my part. That'd be great.
Excellent.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments, we can move on to the permanent substitute.
It's an action item tonight. We're very happy to welcome Samuel Nickel, who has some math experience across the pond. He's from England, and so he's going to support us while he gets together his paperwork so he can become a teacher. But it's just wonderful to have an extra set of hands. And that position, the duration is, we look at really a month, almost just a couple of months, because we don't know what model, but he understands. And during this time, he was working at Maple Street while the high school was in there. So it's another set of hands is a good thing. And so we're bringing that forward as a nomination.
Any questions? All right. And then we have an update on the superintendent search, which I'm going to hand over to Seth and Rob.
Okay. So we are in the middle of the community involvement portion of the superintendent search. So all this week there have been meetings between or among the various stakeholders and our consulting firm. Importantly to note, there are tomorrow there are 2 that are designated community-wide meetings, and those are tomorrow at 10:30 and at 5. So all the information has been pushed out in multiple ways. First of all, under the on our website, under the school board tab, there's a superintendent search tab, and there you would find all the meeting links. So those 2 are tomorrow. On Monday at 9 a.m., there is another forum for parents of students that either have an IEP or 504 plan, and the link is there as well. Now, if you can't attend a meeting, also on that page is a survey, and you can fill out the survey, and that will be just the same as if you had attended one of the forums. In addition, today I just received an email from a community member that provided information about their thoughts about the superintendent search. I forwarded it on to our consulting firm, because what's going to happen from all of this is the consulting firm is going to prepare a leadership profile, which basically means what are we looking for in a superintendent. So essentially, we can take in the information in any way the community wants to provide it, and we can get it all included in the process. So that's the community participation piece. The second piece, which went up on the school board website today and will also be pushed out through our other various web email lists and other Facebook and other means, is the call for volunteers for the superintendent screening committee. So between now and October 12th, I hope that people will volunteer and send me a couple paragraphs about their interest. My email is in the request for people who want to participate. And the meeting, so we will, after October 12th, we will quickly form the committee, and the first meeting of that committee would be October 20th. So that's the next step, is to form the screening committee, and then eventually to start reviewing resumes. So the process is well underway. I urge everyone to share with as many people the different opportunities to provide us with feedback, and I urge anyone who is really interested in getting more involved in the process to just send me an email volunteering to be on the screening committee, and why they would like to do that. So that's where we are right now.
And Seth, I think it's 10 o'clock and 5:30, not 10:30 and 5.
Sorry. Sorry.
So I just want to make sure that the time gets out correct.
Yeah. Absolutely. 10 o'clock and 5:30 and 9 a.m. on Monday for 504 parents and IEP parents.
Seth,
and that's where we are.
Seth, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You know, I want to say thank you and Rob for setting up all these meetings and stuff. I think one area I was a little concerned about, I don't know if the firm spoke to you about this, was that we had no students attend the session. And I value their input. I really do. And I'm trying to figure out, is there another way that we could try to reach out to these students to try and get feedback from them on this?
So in a remote environment, we could, try. So I read the emails that Mr. Kelly sent out to the students. So there was definitely, I saw the notifications that went out. We could try it again with send it again with another email and note that nobody attended the first one and that we do value the input. Honestly, Norm, in some ways it's a challenging time as far as, the limitations we have, but we can try. I can talk to the consulting firm about trying again. But we can't have in-person meetings, which is a limitation, obviously.
I wonder if And I guess I'll leave it up to you guys in the consultants to figure out. I guess another option would just be to send out a follow-up, inviting them to send a, if they have written thoughts,
Yep.
rather than trying
Yeah,
to schedule another Zoom meeting might be
Right.
another way to do it.
Yeah, in the email, yeah, and I'll talk to the consultant if they want to set up another opportunity for in person, but we could also, or at least remote, but also send out a call for written comments and attach the survey that is also attached on the school on our website, because I think the questions asked of the students would be really the same that were asked of the community. So
Do we have
we will
civics
try.
going on right now? Do we have a civic class going on right now? Why couldn't
yeah.
you just couldn't change a course and just have them appear for that one class for them to ask questions?
Well, I can
You couldn't.
talk
You
to.
couldn't do that. We couldn't do that. But I mean, just.
Yeah, I don't know how much it's on student radar. I did when I covered a class last week. One student said, "Hey, I thought you retired already." Just so you know, so some of the students thought I was already at the beach, and so.
I'm just thinking outside the box, guys. I value their opinion. That's all.
I'll talk to the consulting firm about it.
And Seth and Rob, I think we're going to have 2 student reps seated by the next board meeting. So you may have a captive audience of a couple of youngsters who you will have more face-to-face. I think the election, as Chris said, is Friday. I do a little orientation with student reps to the board. And then I think by the 15th, we'll do I think they'll be seated. So maybe that'll help you as well.
Okay.
Thanks, Seth. Any more questions for Seth? All right. So we'll move on and move to financials. And so a monthly financial update for August. And so Michelle, I think this is you.
Yes, so it's very early in the year and we're in a pandemic. So I just preface that like this is the first full year we'll have of, financial reports that will get just tweaked as, as time goes on, as we know more. Right now it doesn't look too bad. We're just under 500,000. That would be fund balance. But I suspect that things might change one way or the other. I mean, it really depends on if we stay in school all the time, well, then that could go one way. If we go the opposite, that could go the other way.
Michelle, I'm curious, how much have we spent out of the, and I think it was 40,000 that the board set aside for sort of COVID-related expenses, and I think the state gave us, another 40,000, give or take. I don't know exactly what the numbers were, but I'm just curious, like how much have we expended out of those sort of COVID accounts that we had set up?
So we put it all in one account. So it's better for tracking, as well as we were trying for FEMA, which didn't pan out. And so we've encumbered and or expended. What I mean by that is this things that have been on back order for a while, about $58,000. And that has risen a little bit since when I did this report a couple weeks ago, because we're starting to see uses and we're trying to get more before things run out. So we are adding on more, but it's not too much more than that at this point. And so that's really us. We were expecting to go through like the end of October, beginning of November. But some of those items are pieces of equipment or like mobile shields for the desks that we don't have to redo, other than maybe we want to get a little bit more. But so it's not an exact science as to like not multiplying this by 4, I'll just say, or something, or even 3.
And we're looking at a quilted paper towel, by the way. That's the discussions that Michelle and I have about what kind of paper towels we're going to buy to clean the laptops. So that's the exciting work, right, Michelle, that we do?
That's right. That's right.
Any other questions for Michelle or Steve on paper towels?
You guys know how to have a good time.
That's right.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
And so the next item is under financial, but it's the ventilation project in the preschool room at Harold Martin. I'll see if you want to set this up.
Do you want to hit the donation first and then finance committee, or do you want to
Oh,
jump?
I'm sorry. I don't know why I just skipped right to the end. Well, why don't we skip to the end and we'll go backwards. I apologize, but we've already started.
Sure. So part of our health and safety discussions is we took readings of our air circulation in our classrooms before the school year started, and we discovered, believe it or not, that the preschool room at Harold Martin School did not have a room-wide ventilation. The only room in the district that I know of like that, Bill and I were pretty surprised about that. But that's one of the great advantages of having a construction management and people on board. They got very much involved to support this and have put together a plan that we can put an energy recovery ventilator, an ERV, in the ceiling, ventilate it with the outside and do baseboard and all soup to nuts. We're trying to get the full number. It's going to be somewhere around $18,000. And that will have in the ceiling a full ventilated, just like other classrooms, because we have the roof units. The Harold Martin, for some areas, doesn't have the massive HVAC. It has single units in the roofs just because of the design. And so what we'd like to do is have a public hearing for withdrawal of funds, and by the 15th, we'll get, so that you buy it, you punch it through, right, the fresh air, you hook it up to a thermostat, so there's all this going. But we'd like to have a public hearing to withdraw funds to install a energy recovery ventilator in the preschool room, which would make that room fully accessible like any other classroom. And then as we start looking at, we're looking at a 2 or 3 week installation. The best would be, I mean, they would like it if we were full remote, it would be really seamless. If we weren't fully remote, we may be able to work with Bill and moving some people around. It's a messy project because once you get the ceiling, it's just a messiness. But so we would like, I really would like to get that room fully operational and solve this problem the right way. And BPS would construction management for us, and we'd work with some of the vendors that were working for the project, so we get some pretty good service related to this project. Does that make sense?
Yep. And so it would come out of the reason for the public hearing is because it would come out of the building maintenance and repair trust fund, right? Is that the right name of it?
You got it. Yep, the Hopkinton School District Building Repair and Maintenance Fund. And we did talk. We have Monday meetings for the facility project, and I appreciate, Jay. We have a list of items and alternates related to the building project. So we really would like to keep this separate. This is not related to the building project, but we have flooring and we have high priorities there. So this really is a maintenance trust item, if you will. That's what it's for. We found something, we have the money to fix it, have a public hearing, and keep it separate was the recommendation by the subcommittee, if you will, the executive committee of the building project.
Is there anybody have any concerns about this? And we would have a public hearing, and so the members of the public could weigh in on this before we vote. So any heartburn about moving this forward through that process?
What's the lead time, Steve, to get it if we approve it for it to be up and running? Do you have a?
They have the device is actually on hold for us. I don't know if it's in Connecticut or they bought it in Connecticut, but it's on hold.
It is.
So I don't know how the way Michelle works. If you have the public hearing on the 15th, she's got the PO, she's got everything done on the 16th, and that's I mean, she will literally the next morning have it all done and say, Steve, it's done. So, and that would support the project. And then it's really about how we fit it in and how we do it safely with kids, depending on more of the discussion on the 15th. And there's no judgment here, but if we went remote at Harold Martin School, we would try to do this during that remote time. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. I just want to make sure it was available,
Yeah, we have not heard that they've released it from hold, and we'd have to figure that out. So and Barry was supposed to call us if there was an issue. He didn't call. I don't think he reached out to Michelle or anything. So
great. Thank you so much.
All right. If there's no other questions, so we'll make sure this is on the agenda for our next meeting on the 15th.
Yeah, probably a 5 o'clock start or 5:15, but Jim, you and I can figure, and Andrea can figure that out when we get there.
Okay. So going backwards on the agenda, sorry about that. We have a generous donation from the PTA. Steve, do you want to talk about that?
Just really, the PTA is a tremendous supporter of our schools. Today, I was talking with Bill with a mask on, and he had his PTA button. And it's just really, they're doing incredible stuff. The first day of school, big signs, and they are so in support of outdoor learning. I've had a chance to visit the 6th grade math teacher, Mr. Wells. I've visited his tent quite a bit because it's proximity. But just thank you to the PTA for supporting. And there's a couple out near the dinosaur too at Harold. And the more we can get kids outside anyway, the better, because I love sunshine and better. But the PTA has just been a tremendous support for the schools as always, but especially in these circumstances.
Any questions or thoughts? All right, thanks to the PTA. And then the Finance Committee update, Rob.
Sure. So I'm going to give you a quick review of, and my phone is ringing. Sorry about that. I don't know how to mute it either. So hopefully somebody picks it up upstairs really quickly. The 2 meetings ago, I can't make it stop. This is terrible. You guys are having a good time.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
It is. All right.
They call me too. It's
Yeah.
like a survey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like talking to those people. It's fun. All right. Anyway, so 2 meetings ago, we really talked about the categories were state funding and base aid. We talked about differentiated aid, things like free and reduced lunch, special ed reimbursement, things like that. The statewide property tax and the valuation and distribution. I think Steve clued us into the idea that 17% of towns actually don't really pay anything because they get it all back. We went through the different grants, the IDA grants, the Title I, Title II, and Title IV grants, and we spent some time talking about grant writing and the support we get from that, both within the school district and some people in the community, and talked a little bit about building that out. There was also a little bit of discussion about the health trust refund that is coming back essentially because it was COVID, and much like many of our insurance companies gave us a refund because people weren't driving, health insurance companies did a similar thing. Our last meeting, which was yesterday, we talked about the budgeting format. So the budget bulletin, and we went through some of the Hudson documents and tried to compare and contrast. And essentially, there are a lot of things that we do very similarly in our budget bulletin. And then there are things where Hudson goes a lot deeper, and that's the discussion that's been going on a little bit in the community. Tomorrow, Norm and I are going to get together and talk about a model that takes some of that. So maybe we get into more depth where, in our scenario, we go into depth through 14 different function code categories. And the primary shift that we were talking about yesterday is doing that by building. So looking at regular ed costs, special ed costs, so on and so forth for each building, and then perhaps getting down to the level of the broad departments without getting into the actual what's being spent within a department. Just so people can track a little better where funds are being spent and how much it's cost to, provide a world language program, things like that. And a lot of the other things in the budget bulletin is, in my mind, formatting. Again, the difference is it's page by page, and ours is sort of a running continual document. So we'll look at that a little bit. We talked about, and Steve talked about what's on the horizon in terms of the budgeting. And so on the cost side, it's looking like, healthcare could be about a 5% increase. The New Hampshire retirement system, which is an obligation that we have, is looking at 2.6% or so for teachers. And for employees, which is Steve and administrators, is a little over 3%. So those are things that we can't control that are going to be, increased cost to us. The homeschoolers, we also talked about in terms of that loss of revenue at about 120,000. We also talked a little bit about, where in the budget do we deal with pandemic planning for next year? Let's assume that all is not rosy and we still have issues, and perhaps we learn that we want to hire more staff to get us through that next year. And I tossed out to Steve whether that would be something that we could actually deal with through a warrant article, because it's a one-time expense, although it would be, as Steve said, very uncommon to do staffing through a warrant article. But it may be something where we can set it up that way, and folks can decide in March. And if all is good and in the summer we're back to normal in September, no harm, no foul. But it sort of teases it out of the general budget, because it would be a one-time thing. So as I said, Norm and I are going to meet tomorrow to do some structural work, and then we're going to have an informal meeting with Steve before our next meeting, just to talk about general outlooks and potential growth and where we want to contain things. And then we have that meeting before the budget committee. So for our meeting next time, we should be in a good place to say, these are some of the things that we would like to suggest we do in terms of budget presentation, and also just highlights of where we expect increases and decreases in revenue and expense, and in fundamental goals, going to December. So, it's Jim, you and I have talked, and Steve, we've talked about, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense not to give direction, so that it's a continual rewriting process. Just makes everybody's job a little easier if they know what we're trying to accomplish. Does that sound about right, Norm and Steve?
Yeah, it does. And Rob and Michelle and Steve, thank you for the last month of us going through quite a bit, on this. Just one thing I want to add to Rob's thing is that Rob's compiling kind of like a little bit of a glossary that we're going to be putting on the district website, that someone wants to understand something that we've discussed. Professor Nato is going to be on there discussing these things. I've learned
Professor Nato is going to be providing outlines of our meeting with vocabulary terms and explanations.
Okay, looking forward to it.
There you go.
I've learned so much from the finance committee meetings that it's really helped me get an overview of where we are in our budgeting process, and they've all three of them have taught me so much to really help me be a better board member, community member, to communicate this to the community. So I look forward to meeting you tomorrow, Rob. I look forward to meeting with you, Steve, and just really developing this new budget process.
Oh, Steve, you're muted. No, Steve, you're still muted. You're still.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It was such a good point. No, I'm just kidding. Michelle Clark College is right. Anything on a warrant article, no means no. So we have to be whatever you put on there, you can't transfer. No means no. And that's just a point from Michelle Clark College. We've been doing this a little while. I don't want that to be lost as we put together warrants. Just keep that in the back of your mind.
It's good that Professor Nato goes to Clark College.
I do. I'm expecting my degree too.
I got one.
At least a certification.
So just on that point, I was, as you mentioned, the warrant article in Steve's comment, I guess I know we've had contingency fund warrant articles. I'm just wondering if it's sort of the same thing. It's not really, but it's sort of in keeping anyway, like a pandemic contingency fund of some sort. But again, if it's voted no, then we don't have the pandemic contingency fund. But and then my second question, Rob, I just want to make sure, so on the 15th, we have talked about at least the board being prepared to give some guidance, on sort of, and so are you gonna, are you or the finance committee are gonna bring, have some of those sort of those larger here, what Norma talked about earlier for the budget committee too, here are some of those, the fixed costs, or at least the baked in costs that we know about. Here's how that affects, at least guesstimation of how that affects the increases. Here's our best guesstimation at this point on the revenue side, just to give us some guidance. Or are you going to have that much information, do you think, for the meeting on the 15th?
I don't know about on the revenue side, but I think maybe on the expense side, we should have a fair sense as to where costs might be and where we would maybe want to be. But I don't, Steve, I'm not sure we'd be there on the revenue at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're right on, Rob. Well, we know a little bit because of the, the October 1 average daily membership will factor in some things, but I think the expense side, by then, we may have a good number on health insurance, right, Michelle, in a couple of weeks? Health insurance, retirement, bond, we can do bond stuff. We'll have most of the big hitters ready.
That's great. All right, thank you. Thanks, Rob and Norm and Steve and Michelle. This is great.
Before we go to public comment, can I say two quick things real quick? I just want to give a shout out to Matt Stone for a fantastic new website. And it's been amazing. A lot of people have said it's been great. And I just wanted to give him a shout out because he did a great job on that. And the last thing, Steve, did we have a discussion at all at some point about the bus situation we talked about a couple meetings ago?
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't give that update in during the hybrid time. So I did talk to our bus contract manager. Bus ridership is low. It's especially low when the high school is fully remote. So but they are fulfilling in their obligations, but it's also low everywhere. So our bus contract manager deals with about 7 school districts, and he said none of our buses were empty, but some school districts are running empty buses. I think we were starting to build a little momentum and people were starting to get more comfortable and the buses worked, and then we went backwards a little bit with the a positive or confirmation. So I think we'll have to build up that confidence again, Norm. One thing, it helped when we did the contact tracing that there were kids who were so spread out on the bus. I mean, so there's a good thing, there's some good here and there's some stuff.
But parents can request to you or to Donna, whoever it is, if they want the kid to ride the bus, their space, just to contact
There
them.
is capacity in our buses right now for sure.
Okay. Thank you guys. I'm sorry breaking that up.
No, it's my fault. You asked me to do that and I did not do it. My fault.
All right. So if there's nothing else, next item is public comment, the second round of public comment. So for those who are still here, if you have a public comment that you wish to give, just go down towards the bottom of your screen with your mouse and you can hit the raise your hand button, which lets us know that you have a comment to give. And so first hand that went up is Ian Tewksbury. Ian, there you go. You can unmute yourself.
Excellent. Please feel free, Jim, to interrupt me because I'm going to try to keep this short because you guys have been going for almost 3 hours. So very quickly, the first thing that I wanted to say is you guys were talking about the importance of the, not the survey, but like the COVID symptom form you want filled out every morning. One suggestion is that each principal make a video and email it to the parents of their particular schools. Mr. Kelly did that with the expectations for the high school lunchroom and hallways, and that might just be one more tool to instill to the parents exactly how important it is if it was a direct message coming from the principal in a video versus just another email.
Thanks, Ian. Good idea.
So very quickly, I have 2 questions. The first one is, can you please tell me where things stand with a plan to go back 100%? I do understand that we just took a step back this week as far as contact tracing goes, but I feel that very strongly that there still needs to be some kind of a plan to go back. The state does have guidelines for some schools that are within less than 6 feet. I would not say that if we go 100%, that we get rid of everything. The lunches seem to be working, social distancing to the best ability in the classroom, one-way hallways, but where do things stand with some kind of a plan to go back 100%?
Yeah, so I think as we've been, meeting quite frequently to get us back in school, I think we've always said that we want to adaptive manage where we are. And so we have the matrix, which helps us figure out, where we are in Merrimack County. We have the matrix that tells us how many of our students, what we do. So we have set that up, and we have got the question around if we stay in green, for a while, how does this board then use that to make a decision moving forward? And so the matrix is one example. So right now we're in yellow. So if we were in green and we stayed in green for a while, I think I can only speak for myself, not for the full board, but I think for myself, that would lead me to say, well, how do we move forward then to maybe bring some students back? and then I guess kind of with that, you know, we just voted on an MOA on working conditions, and as we mentioned, we have an MOA on health and safety, and you know, we collaborate with our union on those agreements, and so I think if the board made the determination that we wanted to consider, you know, moving from where we are today at the 50% hybrid to something more, 100% or more, and we had to change you know, some of the requirements that's in the health and safety MOA, we have to go and negotiate that changes to the MOA with the associations, because that agreement is with both the HEA and HES. And so that's sort of the process that we would have to undertake. And so we would have to go and negotiate again for what a change to that health and safety would look like in order to accommodate more students. And so that's something that we know, and that's something that both unions understand. And so that's written in that, you know, this is that, you know, as circumstances allow, that these types of changes can be brought forward and those types of changes would be negotiated. I don't know if that fully answers your question, Ian, but I think that's like the process and sort of the planning for how we would get from the hybrid model that we currently have to something, you know, with more than 50% of the students attending classes.
No, absolutely it did, and thank you. And I know that traditionally the school boards are needing to focus, and you guys are just about to start with the budget for next year and the whole budget process, and that takes up an exorbitant amount of your time. I would like to see something soon, a little bit more concrete as far as evaluating to head towards 100%. You know, whether it's okay, we're going to look and see where things are on December 1st. Or where things are, you know, January 1st, or something along those lines. I'm just afraid, based on, you know, the quick reading of the MOU that you guys did tonight, that I got the impression that we're almost giving up on the entire school year of going to 100%. I'm not saying that's what the board and the administration want, or that even cross their mind, but that's the impression. That's my biggest fear, is that, you know, we're going to focus on the budget. We're going to see how the next couple of months go. You talked about, you know, the holidays, which is great, and traveling outside New England, and that's a definite concern. But I think before we know it, it's going to be, you know, February 1st, and you know, and we're not going to be able to go 100% for the entire year. But one other question, or one other recommendation that I would highly recommend to the school board is the DHHS algorithm. While Mr. Chamberlain was speaking to it, I read over it. There's 3 times in the guideline that it says 6 feet, within 6 feet of the person who tested positive for contact tracing. But then it says greater than 10 minutes 1 time, and 2 times it says at least 10 minutes. It never says anything about cumulative. And I read over the thing several times, including this evening. And my interpretation would be is that if I'm helping a student for 5 minutes, and then I go help another student and I come back and it's 5 minutes, it's never, no documentation that I've seen ever says if you have 5 minutes at 8 and then 5 minutes at 9, that's 10 minutes, and now you've exceeded that threshold. It's always been, not just with this algorithm, but other things, they always talk about 10 minutes. They talk about 10 minutes in my job, but it's not cumulative, it's all at once. And my biggest issue with the DHS algorithm is that masks don't count. I don't feel that we should go away from masks. I think masks are important. I'm in favor of a 100% mask mandate for sports and for schools, and I do completely support that. But the fact that the contact tracing algorithm does not count when it comes to contact tracing, that my son could do everything he's supposed to be doing, wearing his mask, 100% compliant, and then now because of somebody else, now my son is going to be out of school for 2 weeks through no fault of his own. So I would like the school board over the next couple of weeks to really consider it, because I think this whole contact tracing thing, I could be wrong, I don't think any of us really thought that was even a possibility. It was more like, if we have this many cases in the school, this many positive cases, I think this contact tracing threw everybody for a loop, and I would be willing to bet significant amount of money that it's going to happen again, probably more often than, you know, 6 positive cases at the high school. So
Well, thank you for that. And that is definitely, I mean, Steve and our nurses are in contact with DHHS, I think, quite often. And so that's something that I think they can look into and have a conversation about with them. And then to your other point, yeah, budget season is coming up, but we've made a commitment that at every meeting we're going to look at that matrix, and so that hasn't fallen off of our radar screen. And I think moving forward, that's going to continue to be an agenda item at our meetings. And so that's the opportunity, I think, for this board and for the community to look at, you know, where we are, look at that over time, and then you know, again, if we're in sort of that green area for an extended period of time, then I think how we move from there into the conversation and bringing more students, that feels like the right time to be having that. And then again, we have to negotiate that change with the associations. But I appreciate your point, Ian, and for bringing those up.
Well, wonderful, and thank you all very much for your time. I do appreciate it.
Have a great night.
You too.
So the next hand that came up was Jennifer Blagriff. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome back.
Hi again. I am actually here with my daughter, Kaylin, and she just wanted to speak for a moment.
Sure.
Okay.
I think that kids that have trouble reading should get Wilson, and Wilson really works. And I've done it with my mom and a tutor, and it helped a lot.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
That is awesome.
Thank you, guys.
That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks. Bye.
Oh, that was great. Next is Amanda Gilman. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, can you hear me?
We sure can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. I wasn't sure about the mute thing. So I'm curious if you can answer, there was mention of the symptomatic students were in school for a period of time. Can you tell me how long they were in school for and they were symptomatic?
Steve, I don't know, do you have that information?
2 weeks, though, the 2 weeks.
So they were symptomatic for 2 full weeks while going to school?
Yeah, that's what I was told. For the days that they were in school, it wasn't the first day, so it was parts of both weeks of school. So I don't know if it was the beginning or the end, but yes, parts of both weeks of school.
Okay. I guess that clearly speaks to the parental or the survey that you're talking about. Moving on from that, do I understand correctly, and to echo Ian Tewksbury's comment about 10 minutes of cumulative exposure, or it is definitely cumulative exposure?
That's what that was the DHHS question. We were directed to ask that question for staff, yes, from the DHA investigator.
So maybe this is to Rebecca or Chris, which they've already left, but I guess I pose this question to everybody. How is it that so many teachers are within 6 feet for such a period of time when we're supposed to be doing 6 feet of distancing? Any thoughts on that?
Over that amount of time, we're talking about 1 or 2 minutes per class period, handing out, supporting, but that was the affirmative response to the question directed by DHHS. It didn't seem like it was much time per class.
So I guess my point here is that a total of 10 minutes of total exposure, if this is the case, which I'm still having a hard time swallowing, is a bit of a moving target. And I'm wondering if I can pose the question for the administration and the board to consider plans to change going forward to prevent this in the future, because 10 minutes of cumulative time, and it's not much, and this is going to continue to happen. And so I also echo Andrea's question about, she mentioned, how can we do this differently in the future? Because to me, the hybrid model, while this is better certainly than the full remote model, it is still subpar in terms of the educational experience that it offers. And so I'm left wondering why we are bothering with the hybrid model for our students, thereby offering them, in my humble opinion, less instruction time and a subpar education, when the exposure of our teachers has closed us anyways. So why not have all students back in fully and work towards this full all-in model with masks on, and make it easier then to flip the switch when we do have to go full remote, and then we're all together and we're not all, you know, scrambling at the last minute with these different options. So these comments, I guess, are really for the administration and the board to think about the science behind these actions, as you guys adopted a belt and suspenders approach to this in the beginning, which I know that I mentioned to you that, you know, 6 feet is social distancing and you're going with 6 feet and full masks, but yet here we are in the situation anyways. So why not consider being fully back with masks, which would ease the transition to remote when needed, keep the classes together, and provide the possibility of more consistent and cohesive education, because I fully anticipate that we're going to flip back and forth a handful of times in the future. And then my last comment has to do with the survey. I just put a plug in there for the survey based on the last survey that went out, which I felt was very targeted about the reopening of schools, and it felt very biased in terms of how it directed the questions, and they were not at all open-ended and didn't provide me the options to answer that I wanted, and many other people in the community felt the same way. So if you do send out a survey, and I appreciate the option, please work to make sure they are open-ended and or that there's an option for questions, and not make it too targeted in the future. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate it. So I don't see any other hands for public comment. And so I am going to close public comment, and then we'll move on to action items unless there's any other comments from the board. Okay, so we'll move on to action item number 14. So is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to accept the superintendent's nomination of Sam Nichols, HMHS permanent substitute, pending the final approval of the superintendent, duration to be determined by the superintendent of schools?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Norm?
Norm Gupel, yes.
And Seth?
Seth A-Frame, yes.
Jim O'Brien is a yes. Is there a motion for the Hopkinton School Board to approve the superintendent's recommendation to accept a donation from the PTA in the amount of $2,975 to support of Harold Martin School and Maple Street School outdoor learning?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, PTA. Yeah, thank you. Very thoughtful.
All right. Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Norm?
Norm Gupel, yes.
And Seth?
Seth A-Frame, yes.
And Jim O'Brien is a yes. And so that motion has been approved. That is it for our action items. We do have several items for a non-public session. And so I would ask if there's a motion for the board to go into non-public session for the discussion of matters for RSA 91A:3, Roman 2, A and C, and that was for a personnel matter as well as for a reputation issue.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and so Rob?
Rob Nato, yes.
Andrea?
Andrea Folsom, yes.
Norm?
Norm Gupel, yes.
And Seth?
Seth A-Frame, yes.
And Jim O'Brien is yes. And so this concludes the public portion of our meeting. Just want to thank everybody. Oh, Norm?
Does he have he's remote, so is he gonna be able to dial in? Does he need the number of the non-public? Seth?
Yeah. Okay, so
You see what I'm saying?
I do. Yep. So
Yeah.
we're gonna go just for the public. We're gonna conclude our meeting. We're gonna go into non-public session. So we're gonna we are going to close this down. And Seth, do you have access to email?
Yeah.
Okay.
You do have access to email, Seth?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So so I've sent the board members a link another public meeting. Seth, I'll email you in like 2 or 3 minutes with the phone number that you can access that meeting with.
Okay, sounds good. I'll look at the same email. Okay.
All right, perfect.
I see the link, so, yep, okay.
All right, good night, everyone. Thanks.
About 5 minutes? 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes. I think that'd be great.